Janet at the end of the table. I will call the meeting to order and indicate for the record that all council members are present. I will also report out from our closed session that we just concluded a little bit ago that we had no reportable action. We did hold a closed session for a conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. And so we had no reportable action. We got direction from our attorney. So with that, I will welcome you all here to our meeting this evening and ask you to please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. Welcome, everyone. There are a few scattered seats up here toward the front. Don't be bashful. We won't bite, I promise. The first item on the agenda is our consent calendar. Is there anything anyone wishes to pull from the consent calendar for a separate vote, or is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for approval of the consent calendar. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We have no recognitions or presentations this evening. Reports. We had no planning commission meeting, nor did we have a trails and landscape committee meeting, so we will go directly to city manager and staff. So Ikani.
Thank you, Mayor.
Congratulations, by the way. I will make an announcement unless you want to.
Please make the announcement, Mayor.
Our city manager is a proud father of a baby boy as of this morning. Add that to his 3 little adorable girls.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And all the applause obviously goes to my wife. So she's in the hospital right now, and I'll be joining her after this meeting.
Good.
So appreciate everybody and the round of applause. I was with her last night. I'm not leaving her, but Clayton is just too important. And she knew that.
I told him he had to bring me a picture. He wasn't allowed in.
Yeah. So, no, I appreciate it. So Clayton's my other family, so she knows how important family is. So appreciate that. So just wanted to make an announcement to council and to the community. If you don't know already, please take note and like and our new Facebook page, City of Clayton. We have a new Facebook page. We have about 200 new likes in the last week. So we're just slowly getting the word out there. The purpose of that is just to share some great information. We have great staff, as many people know, just always trying to improve and enhance the community. So we just had a post from maintenance. There was a major leak that happened, and one of our maintenance staff, Dan, was able to get in there with his crew and fix it. It's just one of those very messy situation, but we just have a great team here who's able to fix that, backfill, and are off to the races. Also, I gotta make a great announcement. So our TLC, our Trails Landscape Committee, before for a few weeks we had 0 applicants. Now we have 4. Can we get a round of applause for that?
Yes.
Thank you to the community and to the residents who applied. That's important. And so it just shows how people want to get involved. And thank you to the 4 applicants who put your name in the hat. So we're excited for that. Last but not least, I have Chief Warren next to me, and I just wanted to, well, there's no introduction needed for Chief Warren, but she's here, and she has a brief update for the month of January. So with no further ado, Chief Warren.
Hi, good evening. Just a quick police department highlights from January of 2020. This was an interesting month. We had 3 stolen vehicles enter our city, 2 of which were captured on our license plate reader cameras. So that system is working very well as intended. One of those cases ended in arrest. Another one of those ended in a short pursuit, which the officer ended after it became unsafe. The 3rd stolen car was found at the Clayton Valley Presbyterian Church in the parking lot after reports of a verbal disturbance. The 2 occupants were in a stolen vehicle, both arrested, and the male occupant had a stolen loaded firearm on him at the time. So another great find and arrest by our officers. For the month of January, our officers made a total of 12 arrests, 10 for misdemeanor crimes and 2 for felonies. They wrote 54 police reports. Theft has always been a problem in this city, where there was 8 reported thefts this month, 4 from vehicles, 3 from porches, 1 from a retail store, and there was 1 residential burglary. And of note, all of the thefts from vehicles and the residential burglary is through unlocked doors. So please keep your doors locked, and it's really important not to leave valuables in your car. And a quick update on the Regency Drive parking permit program. That is going extremely well. We have seen a complete reduction in the calls that we get from the residents on Regency and Rialto Drive. The quality of life issues seems to have subsided. We're no longer getting calls of speeding or littering or rude hikers. We are still averaging about 25 to 30 parking citations per month. So to date, we have written 113 parking citations for not displaying a permit. And that's it for the highlights.
Any questions of staff?
Just want to compliment the chief and the department, not only for the action over there at the parking lot at the Presbyterian Church, because just to let people know that our department is keeping this city safe 24/7. Also, I have received several calls from the residents over on Regency Drive, and they're very pleased with the actions that the department is taking over there, and significantly the fewer vehicles that are trying to encroach in the private areas. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
I just have a quick question of Ikani with regard to the Facebook page. Where's the tower that's on that?
You don't know the tower?
Yeah, no,
It's
I don't have a clue.
out.
Yeah, we'll
you
take
head
a
out?
hike. We'll take a hike, and I'll take you.
good.
I'd love to take you. I really don't know where the tower is. Yeah.
Nobody knows. It's in Danville.
Jeff knows.
If you go out to Dana Hills and you hit one of the trailheads from Dana Hills and go southwest, it's not far. You could see it pretty easily.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
And Councilmember Wolf is referring to the Facebook. There's a cover photo, and so if you look at a cover photo, there's a tower that apparently only Jeff knows how to get to. So that's what we're talking about, the tower.
It's 20 minutes off the street.
It's not far.
Famous
Okay.
Clayton Tower.
Very good. All right. So we will go then to city council reports, and we'll start down here at this end with Tuyet first.
No committee reports.
Okay. Jeff?
I spent a lot of time talking with folks, but the more important thing is that today is my son's 11th birthday. So
Congratulations.
Watching
give him a
on
shout out. If he's watching at home, I don't know why he would be.
he's watching the State of the Union.
But oh yes, of course. But yeah, happy birthday.
Okay. Very good. CW?
Okay, I attended the all-city staff blast breakfast. It was a lot of fun. I had a meeting with a couple of constituents, had coffee at Cup of Joe. I attended the library birthday party meeting, which is coming up on the 25th anniversary of the library here, coming up on March the 7th. So I want everybody to come out for that. It'll be a fun day. All kinds of activities for kids and adults. And then, let's see, what else? Oh, also I met with the chairperson of the barbecue committee about the upcoming barbecue in I think it's July. And then that's it, the closed session today. Okay, that's all for me.
Jim?
I too attended the city staff meeting on the 24th. Good kickoff with our new city manager on that with all the city staff. On the 30th, I attended as our representative to the League of California Cities meeting, and that was the legislative kickoff meeting for the League. And 2 of our state senators were there and present. The dominant part of the meeting was our senator, Steve Glazer, who gave us a very detailed report on SB 50. And for those of you that may have not been aware of it, but it failed by 3 votes. But Steve said, don't celebrate just too quickly yet, because somebody's going to go back to the drawing board, and it's got some powerful people behind it. But anyway, it was a good chance to hear from a few other things that were going on in Sacramento as it related to homeless issues that the governor has on his agenda. On the 31st, had my regular meeting with the city manager just to get updated on a variety of different things. And then finally, last night, attended the Art and Wine Committee meeting, which is coming up on the 24th and 25th, 25th and 26th of April, Art and Wine.
Very good. I also attended the city all-staff meeting, and I have had very good reports back from the staff members who were there. They thought it was a really good, efficient meeting, and they got to share a lot of good ideas. So from there, I went to the Bay Area Regional Collaborative meeting and to the Housing Methodology Committee meeting, which is sponsored by the Association of Bay Area Governments, where we're trying to figure out how to allocate the regional housing needs assessment whenever the state finally gets around to issuing a number to the Bay Area. I also attended on Friday the Association of Bay Area Governments and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission workshop, which was a very, very productive meeting about how we go forward as a Bay Area to be more efficient and to solve some of the big problems that are facing all of us together. And then I had the honor on Saturday of attending an Eagle Court of Honor for 4 Eagles from our community. And one of them lives in Walnut Creek, one of them lives in Concord, and 2 of them live in Clayton, and they're all members of a Clayton troop. So we had 3 mayors there to congratulate these young men and to wish them well as they go forward in their young lives, but really impressive young men. So that was my last 2 weeks. So the next item on our agenda then is public comment. And I have 1 speaker card for public comment. I have several for the public hearing, item number 8. If you want to speak on either public comment or on item number 8, please fill out one of the blue speaker cards in the back and give it to Janet, our city clerk, and she will get it to me. But for now, public comment is a time on our agenda when you can speak to any item that pertains to city business that is not on tonight's agenda. So I have 1 speaker, and that is Teresa Jordan. Do you want to speak under public comment, or do you want to speak on the item on the agenda? Okay, we'll change that to item 8. Very good. All right. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak under public comment? Seeing no one come forward, then we will go on to the main event of the evening, and that is a public hearing. And let me just give a brief introduction to this. This is a public hearing to consider the multiple appeals of the Planning Commission's decisions on the Olivia at Marsh Creek project. And I want to thank you all for coming. We intend to have a very orderly and efficient and respectful discussion this evening. There are a lot of very strongly held opinions. Anyone who's been on social media lately knows that. So we're asking for everyone's patience and practice on that. I do want to first before we go into the rest of what we're going to do tonight, I want to give the council a chance to talk about any ex parte communications they may have had with regard to this particular project. We'll start down here. Tuya?
So I'd like to start, and I'd actually like to ask Bill Jordan, the applicant, to come to the mic. I want to ask you a couple of questions, and if you can just provide a yes or no answer unless you feel the need to elaborate.
Thank you.
So my first question is, have you ever engaged myself or my law firm to work on this particular project?
No, I have not.
Have you ever had a client relationship with either myself or my law firm?
No.
Have you ever paid either me or my law firm for any legal advice?
No.
Okay. And to go even step further, have you and I ever even had a conversation?
No.
Thank you. So you can sit down.
Thank you.
And in fact, this is the first conversation you and I have just had.
Correct.
So I think I just wanted to start this off because I've seen a number of stuff on the social media. All of us are subject to conflict of interest laws that focus primarily on whether any particular governmental decision could have a financial benefit to any of the decision makers. If a client of mine were to propose a project in Clayton, I would ask to be recused from that decision. That is a given. That is how the law works. I work in land use, absolutely, but I work in San Francisco and I specialize in San Francisco. Without stating the obvious, San Francisco and Clayton are very different. I have yet to come across a client who has mentioned anything about Clayton or expressed any interest in developing in Clayton. And most of them, frankly, don't even know where Clayton is located. So to be clear, I do not have any financial interest in whatsoever in this project, based on my employment or otherwise. And I think the other aspect of bias is also that every applicant as well as every appellant has a right to require that the decision-making process is fair, especially when our role is adjudicative or not, or quasi-judicial, which it is today. That means that before all of us sat down here today, we must have arrived as reasonably impartial, non-involved decision makers. So none of us should have a personal interest, whether that's financial or otherwise, in the outcome of this project, and none of us should be strongly biased in favor or against any applicant or any appellant. So at least for myself, I've not discussed this project with the applicant or any of the appellants, and I just want to make that clear on the record. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, anything?
I think we have had a conversation back in August of 2018. I think you came to one of my campaign events. So, and obviously I participate pretty heavily online, so all my comments are public there. And then I think I had a phone conversation with one of the appellants.
Okay. CW?
Nothing from me.
Jim?
Yes, I do want to inform everybody that I personally called each one of the 4 publicly filed appeal representatives. So they were on file at City Hall, and then I reached out to each one of them to discuss their specific appeal. And basically, that was just for informational purposes on my part to get a understanding of where each of the 4 applicants, including the developer and one of the 4 appellants.
Okay, and while I have read most everything online, I don't claim to have read all of it because it's been voluminous. And it seems every 2 minutes I get a little beep on my phone that says there's one more comment somewhere. So I have read much of that, but I have not met with any of the applicants or the developer or the appellants or the developer on any of this. And in fact, until recently, I didn't even know who Bill Jordan was. I've not actually met. Heard the name a lot, but never actually met. So we are all here to do our job, to come into this meeting with unbiased opinions and try to make the best decision possible for the community. And I will tell you right now that we have a practice here in Clayton. It's a council practice that we adopted many years ago, that we do not take up any deliberations after 11 o'clock without a unanimous vote of the council. And given the number of people here to speak tonight, we will see how late we go on the comment, but that is just a heads up. The process will be that most of us have seen everything online as much as we can. We've seen the videos of the Planning Commission meetings, so we're fairly aware of the scope of the project and what is entailed. Given that, and that we want to get to public comment as quickly as we can, we are keeping our staff report relatively short. Dana will give us a report, 20, 25 minutes, to tell us about what we have to do and what the process is tonight, and set the stage for this. Then each of the appellants, there are 3, will have 10 minutes to make their case, and then the applicant will have 15 minutes to make his case and rebut anything or respond to any of the three appellants. After that, we will go to public comment. We will have 3 minutes per speaker, just as we always do. I will call multiple people so that people can be lining up and get in line so that when one speaker is done, the next one is ready to go. And just so that you know how the light here works, we have 3 minutes to start, and then it says 10 now because that's going to be for the appellants. But it will say 3 minutes when we go to public comment. When the yellow light comes on, that means 30 seconds. Please wrap up your comments. And when the red light goes on, that's the time to stop and yield the podium to the next speaker. You may not cede your time to another speaker. And if you agree with another speaker, you don't have to say everything they said. You can say you agree. You don't have to use the full 3 minutes if you prefer not to. And just so you know, we will not be responding this evening to individual questions if they're raised from the podium. We will be waiting until all the public comment is over to do that. We will hear all the speakers that wish to speak this evening. And then following public comment, we will keep the public hearing open so that we can have comments at the next meeting to respond to any questions that come back from staff. I think we each have some questions that staff is probably going to have to research before we make a final decision. So, given that, I have a stack of speaker cards here, which I can add to. So while staff is making their staff report, if you have not yet submitted a blue speaker card and you wish to speak, please get that to Janet. With that, I will turn it over to Dana for our staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pierce and members of the council. What I will be presenting to you this evening is just a brief overview of the project, as well as...
Can everybody hear Dana?
Yeah, I'm moving a little closer.
There are also about 6 more seats up in here. If you want to come, you don't have to stand. There are at least that many that I can see.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dana.
Let's move a little closer. Is this better?
Yes, much.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do this evening is just to give a brief orientation to the project. As the mayor indicated, most of us in the room are pretty familiar with what the project is, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but I did want to take a little bit of time to give a little bit of context about the project itself, a little bit of a summary of the project, and then really get into some of the information that's in the staff report regarding the appeals that have been filed and staff's responses to those appeals. Summarizing the project, as we're all aware, the project is an 81-unit senior housing project proposed for rental occupancy. There is a proposed age limit of 55. The developer proposes 7 of the units to be deed restricted so as to be affordable and rented at affordable rents to households of very low income. The proposal includes 86 off-street parking spaces within the properties themselves. Each parcel would have a 3-story building with landscaping, open space, and stormwater retention facilities. And the project itself, the site, constitutes 3 parcels near the southwest corner of High Street and Marsh Creek Road. And shortly after this, I'll have an aerial photo showing where those parcels are. So you can see here the 3 parcels are highlighted in yellow. The northernmost parcel fronts on Marsh, does not front on Marsh, fronts on High Street, and the other 2 parcels front on Marsh Creek Road. All 3 of the properties have a general plan land use designation of multifamily high density. This designation was applied to these 3 properties as part of the city's efforts to meet its regional housing needs allocation. As the mayor briefly mentioned during her comments, the regional housing needs allocation is a process that happens every 8 years where the state assigns a certain amount or determines how much affordable housing and how much above market and market rate housing is necessary to accommodate population growth throughout the state. Those numbers are then divided into regional allocations, and from there, those regional allocations are then delegated down to individual jurisdictions. These properties were redesignated in the general plan as medium multifamily high density with a minimum of 20 unit development potential per acre, in accordance with the allocations that were assigned to the City of Clayton through that regional housing needs allocation process. With this designation with these densities, these parcels, in addition to other parcels that are primarily located within the town center or proximate to the town center area, were allocated with higher density allowances. The parcel on High Street is also in the specific plan area for the town center. It is also has a land use designation of multifamily high density residential, and also has an allowable density of at least 20 units per acre with 2 or more stories according to the criteria in the specific plan. As noted in the specific plan, the properties that have this land use designation of multifamily high density residential are typically located in areas where higher density is considered to be appropriate because there's proximity to transit, because there is proximity to businesses and the opportunity for the residents of those developments to support those businesses. And outside of single family neighborhoods, but closer to the commercial areas where people can take advantage of being able to walk and patronize businesses. The properties themselves are zoned PD, which is a rather flexible zoning district, but does allow residential use as a permitted use. Surrounding uses are mixed. There are some single family residences, both small lot and large lot. The Stranahan subdivision across the street to the east is a small lot subdivision. There are larger lot parcels to the west of this site. Also in proximity, particularly to the property on High Street, there is the U.S. Post Office. There are commercial businesses, cafes, shops, and other establishments, business establishments within the town center. I'm going to scroll through these rather quickly because these really just give you a visual of what the proposed project would look like. And now we get back to more words. So the proposed project includes or requires entitlements that include an affordable housing density bonus application. And this is in accordance with state density bonus law, as well as the city's own ordinance for affordable housing density bonus. What this means essentially is that for any residential project that includes an affordable housing component, in this case, 7 units deed restricted for rental by very low income households, a developer of the project is entitled to an additional bonus in density above what is allowed in the base district. So that minimum 20 units per acre can be increased, in this case, by 35% to allow a higher density in exchange for the provision of very low income households or deed-restricted units. The project also includes a site plan review permit, a tree removal permit, and pursuant to CEQA, the proposed project was, analysis under CEQA, the project fits under a categorical exemption under Class 32 of the CEQA guidelines, CEQA being the California Environmental Quality Act, which essentially provides that for any project that is proposed, a lead agency or a decision-making body or any agency that's authorized to issue the permit for that project to move forward needs to evaluate either whether that project is exempt from CEQA, which staff recommends that this project is, or if not, then there needs to be an analysis of the potential environmental impacts should that project move forward. Similarly, potential environmental benefits if that project moves forward. The Planning Commission heard this item twice, once in November, once in December, at a continued public hearing. There were two resolutions that the Planning Commission was asked to consider and that staff recommended be adopted. The first, Resolution 0519, formalized the determination of an exemption from CEQA under the Class 32 categorical exemption for infill development projects less than 5 acres. The Planning Commission, by a 3-to-1 vote, approved and adopted that resolution. And moving on to Resolution 0619, taking action itself on the project and recommending approval of the project, the Planning Commission made no action on that resolution due to a tie vote of 2-to-2. Subsequent to the planning director's filing of the notice of determination of those actions, or notice of decision of those actions, excuse me, the city received 4 appeals. 3 of those appeals were filed regarding the Planning Commission's decision with regard to the CEQA exemption. Those appeals were filed by Kent Ibsen, Dan Hummer, and Irina and Alexander Liskovich. The developer of the project also filed an appeal of the second resolution, or the non-action of the Planning Commission with regard to the second resolution, 0619. In addition to that appeal of the no decision action, the developer requested that some of the conditions that staff had recommended in resolution 0619 be eliminated. And that information and his explanation or rationale for why that request was made is further explained in his letter of appeal, which is included in your packet. In summary of the staff report, there were several issues that were raised in the appeals, and we'll just go through one by one. The first appeal that the city received was from Mr. Ibsen, who stated that the specified findings of Resolution 0519 were not supported by evidence. There were not very specific details provided as part of the appeal. There were no specific examples of evidence that contradicts the findings that were made in that resolution. Staff continues to believe that the findings in the resolution are true and correct, including the finding that there is not a substantial evidence in the record that the Olivia project would have a significant impact on the environment as it's defined under CEQA. The staff report continues to explain the criteria that need to be met for the Class 32 infill exemption, including that the project is consistent with the general plan and all land use regulations that are applicable to the property, which, as I summarized prior to this slide, the project is. The proposed development occurs on city limits on a site of no more than 5 acres. The proposed sites in combination constitute about 3 acres. Each is about 1 acre in size. The project has no value as habitat for endangered, rare, or threatened species, would not result in significant effects relating to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality, and can be adequately served by all required utilities and public services. There were reports that were included in the record that were requested by staff or peer-reviewed if they were submitted by the applicant, by a city's consultant, that provide additional explanation for how the proposed project would not result in any significant environmental impacts under the criteria of CEQA. The second appeal, which was filed by Dan Hummer, references density bonus law allowance for a condominium conversion project and indicates that the project does not meet the regulations applicable for condominium conversions and low-income projects. The proposed project is a rental project. It is not a condominium conversion. Condominium conversions apply in a situation where you have an existing rental project that is proposed to be subdivided for individual purchase of the units. That's not the case here. These are rental units, not a condominium conversion, and this point is not related to the environmental exemption, the CEQA exemption. There's also a reference in Mr. Hummer's appeal regarding an exemption for housing projects within unincorporated areas of less than 5 acres. As is noted on the screen, this is a reference to a new CEQA section. The Class 32 exemption has been in place for several years in the CEQA guidelines and has specifically made reference to properties that are located in incorporated cities. The new exemption doesn't apply. The properties are incorporated within the city limits of City of Clayton, and so the more appropriate exemption to use would be the Class 32. A third point raised in Mr. Hummer's appeal was regarding the potential for significant impacts relating to parking. More specifically, that the project proposes too few parking spaces relative to demand, and that this is a traffic-related impact. Inadequacy of parking is itself not an environmental impact under CEQA. That language was actually stricken from CEQA several years ago. Examples of significant transportation impacts that could be evaluated under CEQA would include conflicts with transit, pedestrian, or bicycle facilities, or conflict with adopted plans or policies that speak to transportation services, or policies that deal with effectiveness of a circulation system's performance, which in this case, for the time being, could include level of service, which I'll speak to a little bit later. Eventually, though, we'll be migrated away from that toward vehicle miles traveled. We won't get into that in detail, but transportation impacts under CEQA do not include parking. The fourth point raised in the appeal was regarding consistency with the general plan and zoning. The claim made by the appellant is that the project is not consistent with general plan goals, specifically those that speak to retention of large estates, maintaining rural character, encouraging balance of housing types and densities, and preservation of natural features, ecology, and scenic vistas. As I previously noted in an earlier slide, the property is designated multifamily high density, not rural estate. It does allow for higher density development, including developments of attached units of a minimum of 20 units per acre. As I mentioned previously, the proposed project is also consistent with housing element goals in support of helping the city to achieve its share of the regional housing needs allocation. And I do not believe I noted this earlier, but the property is noted as one of the opportunity sites in the housing element in the last 2 cycles of the city's housing element, which is an element of its general plan. The fifth point raised in the Hummer appeal deals with the potential for the project to contribute to significant cumulative impacts, specifically those related to parking, excessive traffic speed, fire equipment safety concerns, and property values of surrounding homes. As I mentioned previously, parking is not an environmental impact under CEQA. Other regulations or other concerns that are expressed in the appeal regarding traffic speed, for example, or the ability of fire staff to respond to an emergency in the building, those are regulated by other rules. Those are not necessarily environmental impacts. Traffic speed is regulated by traffic laws, vehicle codes. Fire equipment and fire safety is regulated by building code. And these are not issues that are specifically addressed or regulated under CEQA, though they are addressed under other codes that are adopted by cities or counties that approve projects. The sixth point in the Hummer appeal is regarding a potential for the project to cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of a historical resource. He notes that there are structures on 2 of the properties on Marsh Creek Road that are more than 70 years old. Under CEQA guidelines, a structure that is more than 50 years old is not the sole criteria for determining whether it has historical significance. It is one of the criteria. However, the structure or the site also must be associated with a historic event, a prominent person, or include some sort of distinctive architectural characteristic. For example, if it's a very good example of an arts and crafts architectural style and has not been significantly modified so that it's unidentifiable for that architectural style. Age of a structure simply in itself does not determine a structure to be historically significant. Analyses that have been previously done as part of task force reports for the Clayton Heritage Preservation Group, as well as information in the General Plan Community Design Element, do not identify any of these 3 sites in their list of historic structures or sites in the city of Clayton. Seventh point raised in Mr. Hummer's appeal is regarding a potential for the project to damage scenic resources, stating that Marsh Creek Road is named as a scenic route in the general plan, which it is. The proposed development is not inconsistent with the scenic route designation. The objectives in the general plan, which are listed on the screen here, include including visual and cultural amenities in the scenic route, cooperating with property owners, to allow a development that's compatible with scenic corridor objectives. This project itself includes landscaping, building setbacks, elements that allow for a more scenic view along Marsh Creek Road and less encroachment of structures to allow for relief in the scenic perception along that street. Moving on to the Liskovich appeal, which was the 3rd appeal filed regarding the CEQA infill exemption. There are, again, several points raised here. The first is regarding the potential for, or concern regarding inadequate parking for the project, creating a traffic hazard on Stranahan Circle, including danger to children, pedestrians, and bicyclists. Again, parking is not an environmental impact under CEQA. The infill exemption analysis concluded that the project would not have any significant traffic impacts. The number of trips that's estimated to be generated by the project was estimated to be very low. And level of service was, actually I'll get to that later. Again, addressing parking, although it is not an environmental impact, the applicant did submit information and a parking analysis that estimated using data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is a very highly regarded organization for traffic engineering. The applicants submitted analysis prepared by Kimley Horn, a professional traffic engineering company, indicated that based on that, what we call ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers, standards or guidance, their data, the proposed project as a senior housing project would have a parking demand of 53 stalls, or for 81 units. Now, the city requested a peer review of that analysis, and the peer reviewer suggested that a higher number should be used. Given the low number of data points that fed into the senior housing parking average per unit that fed into that 53 stalls, and using data that was more local to California, the peer reviewer suggested that the project include something closer to 90 stalls, or 1.1 spaces per unit. The project was subsequently revised from an earlier iteration to include 86 stalls, which is closer to that 90 stalls that the city's peer reviewer suggested. In addition, there was a recommendation to address the concern, though again, not a CEQA impact, that would require the applicant to contribute to a parking program for the Stranahan subdivision or some other, a mechanism, in other words, to try to manage the concern that was raised during the public hearing. But again, to the point of the appeal, parking is not a CEQA impact. A second point raised in the Liskevich appeal is regarding additional traffic impact from the project, possibly creating hazardous conditions in the event of a necessary evacuation due to a significant emergency. Existing roadways in the area have capacity to accommodate the proposed project as well as existing and potential future development. Again, traffic information that was completed by Kimley Horn and peer-reviewed by Abrams Associates, who was hired by the city, estimated the number of vehicle trips that the project would generate, again, based on ITE's trip generation as opposed to their parking generation. When the city staff applied that trip generation number to the existing level of service that came from another environmental impact report prepared for a different project in the area, factoring in a few dozen houses at most that have been built in that time frame since that EIR was done, the level of service or the performance of intersections that were studied did not fall below a level of service B. Now, level of service, just in brief summary, is a metric that is applied to explain how well an intersection functions. If it's an LOSA, you're pretty much moving through the intersection very quickly, or you're moving along the segment of road very quickly. The letter grades degrade from A down to F. When you get to F, the intersection or the road segment is essentially what we call failing, where someone who is at the intersection may be waiting for more than 2 minutes to make a right or left turn, or someone on a segment would be stuck in severe congestion. In this case, the city's desired worst case is level of service D under general plan policy. The intersections that were considered and evaluated in staff's review of the information would perform at a level of service B with inclusion of this project. Okay, moving on to the appeal of the no decision action on the planning entitlements filed by the applicant, Mr. Jordan. The first point raised in the appeal is that the application is consistent with applicable city standards and policies. It's consistent with general plan zoning, identification of housing elements, site inventory, and is appropriate as a site for high-density residential development. Staff concurs. As explained previously, the project is consistent with the general plan and the allowable density for the property. The requirements for granting of a density bonus have been met with the inclusion of the offering of 7 very low-income units. And again, the parcel was identified in the housing element as a potential opportunity site. The second point raised in Mr. Jordan's appeal is regarding the Planning Commission's denial, potentially violating the Housing Accountability Act, which obligates the city to identify in writing potential inconsistencies between the application and the city's objective standards, and the Act indicates that this must be done within 30 days of the application being deemed incomplete. Now, the Act does not apply technically to this project because the Act became effective after the application was submitted to the city. Nonetheless, the city did notify the applicant in November, within 2 months of application submittal, that the application was adequate for purposes of processing. And again, staff believes that the project as proposed complies with city standards, and therefore there was no notification of inconsistencies. The third appeal point raised in Mr. Jordan's appeal is regarding density bonus law and clarification regarding uncovered parking as a requested waiver. Again, staff concurs. Staff maintains the analysis and conclusions that were presented in November 12th to the Planning Commission and believes that the project does indeed qualify for a density bonus as well as the concessions that were requested. Uncovered parking is allowed under state law and is therefore removed as a waiver. The fourth point deals with certain proposed conditions of approval that the applicant believes were not reasonably required. These included 5 new conditions of approval, which we will go through point by point. The first condition, condition number 116 in your attachment, requires the applicant to contribute up to $20,000 to establish a parking permit program for the Stranahan subdivision. I spoke to this briefly a few moments ago regarding the CEQA appeal. The proposal or the proposed condition was written to address public concerns that were raised in November regarding the potential for the project to impact parking outside of the boundaries of the site. There is an allowance, a standard for site plan review in the city's municipal code that deals with reasonable maintenance of privacy. In addition, as I said, the recommended condition was proposed at the second public hearing in response to comments that were raised and concerns that were raised by speakers at the November public hearing. I'll get to that momentarily. Other conditions that were recommended in the December public hearing were regarding installation of speed feedback signage. You know, you drive and you have a sign that tells you how fast you're going and tells you to slow down if you're going too fast. Installation of a pedestrian activated crosswalk at Marsh Creek Road, where the trail crosses Marsh Creek Road. This would essentially be a situation where a pedestrian approaching the crosswalk could press a button. It would highlight flashing lights that would alert drivers to the presence of a pedestrian and advise them or warn them to slow down. And provision of annual bus passes to tenants, and establishing a car share program to facilitate reducing on-site parking. As I mentioned, the applicant has concerns about these conditions, but staff does believe that they can be connected to existing ordinances of the city regarding transportation demand management, which are adopted, and the intent of that ordinance, which is in chapter 10.60 of the city's municipal code, are intended to encourage transit, ride sharing, bicycling, and walking, and that inclusion of these programs and policies should be incorporated into the land use review and planning process. The last condition that was recommended at the December hearing was regarding installation of 15-gallon trees off-site. The staff, again, maintains the recommendation that something should be included regarding landscaping. The city has in its general plan policies that support creative landscaping solutions. There are also policies that promote improvement of air quality. The project itself, though it may be small enough not to meet screening criteria to require a more in-depth study, there will be people driving. There will be on-site parking, and the recommendation for provision of trees is provided and to be consistent, or recommended, to be consistent with the community design element regarding natural vegetation and landscaping and greenery to maintain the city's rural atmosphere, but also to be consistent with policies that support reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and offset of those emissions through vegetation. Okay, so staff recommendation remains essentially the same as what was presented to the Planning Commission at the December 12th public hearing. Staff continues to recommend that the project does meet the exemption criteria for a Class 32 infill development project. And staff does believe that the findings can be made and the project could be approved for the affordable housing density bonus application, the site plan review permit, and the tree removal permit. Before I conclude, I simply wanted to note for the record that staff did receive comments from another comment letter from Kent Ibsen, a comment letter from Sonia Traus of Yimby, a comment letter from Kathy Shirko, and staff also received a additional written commentary from the developer regarding suggested changes to the conditions of approval that were recommended, to which I just spoke a few moments ago. And his comments and suggested revisions are noted in the attachment. All of these letters of correspondence or attachments have been provided to City Council members. And with that, if you have any comments, I don't know if the mayor, you would like to invite those now, or if you'd simply like to move on to the speakers.
We're actually going to hold City Council questions until after public comment, because we really do want to hear from the public first. The only other question I would ask, is there anything council or the city manager wish to add to the staff report at this time? Okay, if not, again, if you want to speak to this item, I have a stack of cards here, but if you wish to speak to the item, certainly fill out a speaker card and get it to Janet, and she will bring it to me when we get to that. But first, we are going to go to the three appellants, and the first of those is Kent Ibsen, and he will be speaking for 10 minutes. Then Dan Hummer, who will also speak for 10 minutes, and then Irina and Alexander Liskovich will be allowed 10 minutes, followed by the developer with 15 to respond to those and to make his own points. So Kent Ibsen, welcome.
Welcome. So I'd like to start with a couple things. There's been a revolving door of city government here. And so I've been trying to learn about this process and the appellate process. But when I called the planner, the community development director, he had stepped down right after the last planning commission, and then the city manager stepped down 6 days before the planning commission hearing, and I think this gentleman was on 1 day before. In one of the single biggest development projects that this town has ever seen, and we had 4 planning commissioners, and we have a temporary people holding spots for temporary people that were holding spots, and this is our city structure that's overseeing this massive endeavor. So I went outside the city to another planner and sought some advice from her. And I don't know whether it's correct or incorrect. I think when I called, there was some conflicting reviews on that, and it was in regard to a project being the CEQA, the Class 32 CEQA being approved without a project tethered to it because the project didn't pass. So it's just sitting out there, not attached to any project. And so one city planner said that you can't do that. And that was contradicted by the interim city planner. And so that was one issue that I had concern with. The other one is that the Class 32 exemption speaks to infill projects of less than 5 acres. And this is 3 acres, but I have confirmed that Mr. Jordan has a right of first refusal on Mr. Hoyer's property, and even to the point where he said he was going to put a clubhouse up there. Well, there's a property in between Mr. Hoyer's property and the assemblage that Mr. Jordan has already put together. So if you're going to put a clubhouse at Mr. Hoyer's property, how are you going to get there without having some sort of attachment to the property in between? I asked Mr. Jordan if he had a right of first refusal on that property. He did not respond. We tried to reach out to the neighbor, and he did not respond. Mr. Jordan did inadvertently, accidentally email me back when he thought he was talking to someone else, and he said that I was rude and that it was none of my business. And so, the reason I asked the question is to put it out there in the universe and to everyone here that that's 6.5 acres, which entitles him to 175 units. And it's a lot bigger project than what's being presented. And if that is in fact the case, then, and I'm not a CEQA lawyer, and he's got one, I'm sure he'll come up and speak to it, but it's piecemealing. It's taking on a 3-acre project to get your exemptions or possible concessions, and then bringing another 3.5-acre project, which is 6.5 acres. And you can't piecemeal a project. CEQA says that. I know that. You have to look at the project as an aggregate. Now, where's the bridge? If it was just zoned down the street, it's a pretty long bridge, and you probably wouldn't have any rights there. But if you have rights of first refusal on the property that has the exact same zoning as the 3 acres that you already have, that you're before this council trying to put 86 units on, then it gets to be a pretty short bridge. And if it is in fact a 6.5-acre parcel, it's not an infill project, and he's not entitled to the 32 exemption. That's all I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Kent. Thank you, Kent. The next speaker is Dan Hummer, who will be followed by Irina and Alexander Liskovich. Welcome, Dan. You have 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. Good evening, Mayor Pierce, City Council members, and City staff. My name is Dan Hummer, and I live in Stranahan Circle, which is directly across from a proposed Olivia project. Thanks for considering the appeal in regards to the Planning Commission's decision to approving the CEQA. I've done a lot of research on this, and I've listed 7 reasons on the appeal. I know that it was answered. I wish I would have actually had those answers before this evening. I would have totally had a different speech prepared for this evening, because I was basically going to just highlight aspects of what I indicated inside the appeal, just in case other members haven't been able to read through it, or for the actual city itself. So I'll just go ahead and proceed with that. I have 10 minutes, so I'll just go ahead and do that. Under the reason 1 in the appeal, it was stated that this was to be converted to condos. Yes, it's not a condo conversion yet, but it was actually indicated that it would be, and Mr. Jordan did answer yes to that question when he was asked. So there's the relevance in regards to the CEQA exemption. I don't know on how that, I'm not a CEQA lawyer, so I don't know on how that actually ties into this, but I think there's still relevance there. Number 2 on my list, California legislature had enacted the new public resource. I cited 21-159.25 as of January 1st. I thought that this was proposed after that, the project, and so that's why I thought that the infill amendment would actually be subjected to that type of ruling on there. Under reason number 3, CEQA requirements state that the project must not result in significant effects relating to transportation. You indicated that parking is not part of CEQA. Well, here you have 81 units with a potential of 234 residents. You are going to be creating foot traffic for parking, and that is a safety concern, which I think is actually a CEQA requirement, I believe. So you are creating a safety concern. Under reason number 4 of the listing, the CEQA requirements state that the project must be consistent with applicable general plan and zoning. You had answered on that as well. This is not consistent with the general plan and only complies with the zoning and multifamily development. In the city's general plan, it stated, quote, retention of large estates should be encouraged, but if they are to be redeveloped, then the development should be done in such a way as to preserve trees, provide adequate screening from roads, and prevent the loss of atmosphere, unquote. This project is just the opposite for all three of these general plan requirements, and thus shows that this project does not meet the CEQA requirements. Inside of that quote, it does not state what you had indicated in there, that it was for a rural instance. It makes no reference to that whatsoever. This is not in accordance with the general plan, in my opinion. Under reason 5 of my listing, the CEQA requirements of the state development should not have significant effect due to cumulative impacts. Whether or not they're CEQA impacts or if they're another building code impact or safety code impacts, I believe they're cumulative impacts. I listed 5 very valid reasons on how this project would have adverse cumulative impacts. One was inadequate parking. Once again, you have the foot traffic and safety concerns. And number 2, safety, again, due to people needing to park on Marsh Creek or in surrounding neighborhoods and having to cross Marsh Creek. Sometimes traffic on Marsh Creek is 50 miles an hour plus. I live right there. And there's a blind curve that when you come down from the middle school. I don't like crossing Marsh Creek by my house, and I'm under the age restriction for the living in the development. Number 3, once again, more safety. The Clayton Fire Department does not have 3-story ladder, which would inhibit the fire department to properly deal with potential fires in the proposed development. But once, I'll just go through all of these and then I'll circle back. 4, the project is to be sold for condos in the future. Parking restrictions are hard to enforce for condo developments. This will lead to nearby neighborhoods applying for parking restrictions and permits. The Olivia's residents of 234 plus residents will need to park somewhere. 5, I believe that the 3-story buildings will have an adverse effect on nearby neighborhood housing prices. This basically shows that there are cumulative impacts. Once again, if they're not CEQA, my apologies, but these are cumulative impacts, and I believe that it should not be passing the CEQA requirements. Under reason 6 of my listing, the CEQA requirement states that a project cannot cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of historical resources. I understand that these are not on the historical register, but maybe we should be doing something that's of one of the couple of the last remaining houses in Clayton that are basically of this age. There's really just not that many houses around anymore. I think there are probably less than a dozen. I think we should probably do something, hopefully, to help that. Under reason number 7 on my listing, CEQA requirements state that the project cannot damage scenic resources. On the website is Marsh Creek Road is considered a scenic corridor. The picture is even on there, so I'm not exactly sure on why you think that does not justify not passing the CEQA regulations for that. It is actually designated a scenic corridor. Further discussion of the requirements. There must be some provision for small cities like Clayton, which are 95% built out. How can the state force down a one-size-fits-all requirement for CEQA infill? So, like the city's action recently taken for SB 50, I propose the Clayton City staff, City Council, and/or its residents get together and write a letter to the state indicating there is no one-size-fits-all mandates for cities of our size and that are actually already built out. I know it might be a little bit late for this project, but for future projects. In addition to the CEQA requirements, it was stated in the December 10th meeting that the project would not be feasible if the project did not have 81 units. I'm not a financial analyst, but I can connect the dots, and I remember past project proposals. Mr. Jordan had proposed 2 other projects in my recollection for these lots with much lower density and ample parking from what I recall. So how are these projects feasible then and not now? The reason why I'm bringing that up is part of there was a financial feasibility that would actually help it pass CEQA requirement. So that's why I'm bringing that up. In summary, I've documented many reasons why this project does not pass CEQA. You may not agree with my interpretation of the law or requirements for all of these reasons, but I have listed at least 7. I find it hard to believe that you would not agree with at least 2 or more of these I've listed, hence proving that the project does not meet CEQA requirements. So as the banner states in front of the mayor here, do the right thing, consider which is being presented before you this evening and overturn the CEQA approval for the Plan Commission for this project. This is not right for Clayton and does not pass CEQA requirements in my in my opinion. Once again, I'm not sure if this is, I'm kind of new to the appeal thing. I've never appealed one of these, but what you had to put up on the wall here in reaction to our appeal would be nice to have to the applicants, their appellants, prior to the meeting, so that they could actually curtail maybe some specific answers to whatever you had already basically brought up or answered, so that it could actually be more of a dynamic thing instead of us maybe summarizing what we already put in there for the general public and or emphasizing points for the city council. Just a thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to ask staff, is the streaming working? Do we know? Is it? Okay. Okay.
I'll just note, if you have an Apple device, go ahead and change a channel and the live stream will come up on your screen. There's a channel 1 and 2, so just make sure you just change that channel, it'll show up.
Okay. So, but also realize there's only so much bandwidth in this room, and if everybody tries to log in and watch themselves on TV, you won't get a signal. So it's pretty limited. Okay, so the next appellant is Irina and Alexander Liskovich. You're up. 10 minutes.
We're not going to speak together. Irina Liskovich, I live in Stranahan Circle. I'm actually glad that that was put up because it did not address at all what I put up in my appeal. I wasn't talking about parking. Parking by itself is not insecure. Yes, I agree. It was a traffic hazard, not parking. That was my number 1 in the appeal. And why? During the public hearings that I was here 3 times, it became apparent that the parking allotment is woefully inadequate, which will lead to the parking hazard because Stranahan Circle will have at least 100 additional vehicles that will have a hazardous effect on all the kids playing on Stranahan Circle, all the people who are walking around Stranahan Circle, and all the people who are riding bicycles on Stranahan Circle. Our Stranahan Circle right now is a playground. You can see this yellow, little yellow cutouts that says children at play. I'm glad there are a lot of children. My children grew up and left, but other children are there, small children. They are playing constantly on Stranahan Circle. People who actually took their time, and I hope the city council members did do this, they could take a look how many kids are out there. Another 100 cars, and 100 cars probably is not going to be the smallest number. It's not going to be an adequate number because 55 plus people do go to work. 55 plus people, we're thinking about 2 people per household. It could be 2 cars. If they're parked on Stranahan Circle and people trying to get around Stranahan Circle while kids are at play, a lot of moms who stay home, they let their kids out at 7 a.m. sometimes. This is a hazard. This is nothing to do with parking per se. It's a traffic hazard. It's a hazard to human life. That's why I was glad it was put up, because I immediately noticed that my number 1 appeal was not represented correctly. It's nothing to do with parking per se. It's a hazard to human life of people living on Stranahan Circle. Number 2. It says that it has to preserve general safety of the community regarding seismic, landslide, flooding, fire, and traffic hazards. Let's address the fire. Again, what we saw on the screen does not address at all what I meant in my appeal. My appeal states absolutely clearly that California has become, in recent years, an extreme fire danger. Clayton is one of the most susceptible places I know because we lived in Clayton since 1998. We've been through many fires. And I know what it is to pack up a car and leave because the fire comes from Morgan territory. Nobody is saying that Olivia project will cause the fire or it will be on fire. It's irrelevant, absolutely irrelevant. So I don't understand how you can misinterpret such a simple thing. The fire will come from the Morgan territory, it will come from Brentwood, from Mount Diablo, anywhere. And then we are trapped. It is as simple as that. We will be trapped. Every single one of us who lives on Stranahan Circle. Nothing to do with parking. Nothing whatsoever. It's to do with people trying to cross from this development with 230 people additionally trying to get to their cars, parking their cars, and try to get on one lane on Marsh Creek Road. There is no light. There is no intersection regulation whatsoever when you try to get out of Stranahan Circle. It's one way. One way only. We can go right or we can go left, but it doesn't matter. We are stuck on this intersection. There is no light, there is no regulation, and I can hear that the applicant doesn't want to even bother doing any kind of regulation on this intersection. So my concern is it's deadly. It's a deadly fire trap. That's what it is. It's nothing, again, to do with parking. And CEQA is very clear about fire dangers. It's again, nothing to do with how the buildings are fire code. It doesn't matter. It's us who will be trapped on Stranahan Circle without any adequate, way out of there. That's why we try to appeal it. This complex is too big for us. Because as many houses as are on Stranahan, everybody will try to get out. Plus another 86 unit multiplied by 2 for sure. So I don't understand how my appeal 2 points of traffic hazard and fire hazard became parking issue. It's not a parking issue at all. It's an issue of us not being able to leave the area if there is a fire. I'm not talking about flood. We're not thinking about flood from Marsh Creek or anything like that. The fire is very relevant. 2 years ago, we had to leave. The fire was everywhere, and it came from Morgan territory, not from some complex built on Marsh Creek Road. So I am absolutely glad that we saw it. And every time when I ask that same question, it's the third time I'm asking the city. And every time, including Mr. Walton, who absolutely did not address this, absolutely ignored this, and that's why I put it in the appeal, because nobody adequately ever addressed that question. Nobody answered anything. Everybody was talking about only parking, and I asked that question several times. So basically, if we want to turn Clayton into paradise, maybe that's what your plan. I don't think it's a good plan for Clayton, and this resolution should not, and 0619 should not be approved. It should be overturned just because nobody is addressing these two issues. Forget the parking.
Thank you, Irina. Okay, now it is time for Bill Jordan, and Bill, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, city staff and city consultants, mayor and city council, friends and family. I'm William Jordan, representing the Olivia on Marsh Creek. Tonight, I have my CEQA and land use attorney who will speak to the appeals, including our appeal. His name is Steve Believis. He is with the firm of Burke, Williams, and Sorensen. Steve will be going through a PowerPoint presentation highlighting our points of view. I'd like to turn it over to Steve.
Good evening, Mayor Pierce, Vice Mayor Juan, fellow commissioners. Thank you, Bill, for the introduction. I am a land use and CEQA attorney in Oakland, and just a little bit more about me. I represent public agencies and private clients, perhaps public agencies more. And I understand the struggle. You talked about your SB 50 issues and the issues I'm going to talk about today relating to the density bonus law and the Housing Accountability Act, which essentially limit your discretion. And that's tough to hear, tough to swallow, tough to take, and I understand that. But it's not my client's doing, it's the state legislature's doing, and those are the laws that are on the books, and we have to compare this project to. And so I'm here today to talk about the relevant laws, the relevant facts, and why you should grant our appeal as staff recommends and approve the project, and also confirm the CEQA exemption. You've seen the pictures already. This is staff showed them, so I'll just get right to. So summarizing our appeal is to overturn the Planning Commission's decision, to which the staff describes as a no decision. We characterize it as a denial, but regardless of how it's characterized, there was no approval of the project application and requested entitlements at the Planning Commission. We also, in our appeal, had demonstrated why we believe it's important and legally required to remove the certain 5 conditions of approval. Formerly, they were numbers 119 through 123, and now they're 116 through 20. And lastly, we asked that the City Council uphold the Planning Commission's decision finding the project exempt under the Class 32 exemption for infill development. The basis for our appeal are pretty simple. The Housing Accountability Act and the State Density Bonus Law require specific findings to deny a housing application. This is what I led my intro with. You have some limited discretion, and the denial findings your city attorney described to the Planning Commission in December are really challenging to make and support. That's how this legislature created them. The second point is that there is no evidence in the staff reports throughout the process here, back in November, December, and the current staff report before you. There is no notes and describes that there's no evidence in the record that would support findings for denial under the Housing Accountability Act or the State Density Bonus Law. The second basis for our appeal and the request for the removal of the conditions of approval, those are based on the fact that the imposition of these conditions would amount to an unconstitutional taking. What I'm saying there is there's case law that requires, before you condition a project, with whether they're mitigation measures under CEQA or conditions under your discretion under the permits that are at issue, there has to be a nexus that the project is somehow leading to or causing the concern to be alleviated by the condition, and a rough proportionality. So if there is a nexus, that there's going to be some contribution to a problem, the project can't be required to solve the entire problem. It has to solve its proportion or its portion of the problem. And as I'll discuss, those conditions of approval are overreach wildly, and there's no nexus or rough proportionality demonstrated by the staff. So I'm going to talk briefly, because it's still fresh on your minds, from the testimony from the appellants and from the staff report on the CEQA exemption issue. Each of the 3 CEQA appeals are factually and legally without merit. The Planning Commission properly found that the housing application meets each of the 5 criteria for the infill exemption. I'm not going to go through them because staff already did a great job at that. And also, there's no exceptions to the categorical exemption that apply. You don't have to take my word for it. Yes, the project application and the applicant team and their consultants did prepare and submit a number of reports on biological impacts, the potential for biological impacts, air quality impacts, water quality, traffic, noise. But the city hired their own consultant, and he's here tonight, I believe, from Rainey Planning and Management, who reviewed all those reports and objectively, and as the city's representative, found that all of the criteria for the exemption could be met. That also found that none of the exceptions, which if they applied could negate the exemption, none of those applied either. Interestingly enough, Rainey and Planning and Management had to go on and hire additional consultants to help them in areas that they needed help on noise and traffic. So there were even more consultants on the city side, not from the applicant team, that concurred that all of the criteria for the exemption are satisfied here. And quite frankly, there is no evidence in the record that any of that the project does not meet any of the criteria. Oh, I'm sorry. While it's still fresh on my mind, I'm going to go through because the appellants raised some points and I wanted to respond to them. With respect to the appellant Ibsen's comment that this project is improperly piecemealing, piecemealing is a concept under CEQA where it's a concern if when you describe the project that's being analyzed for whether it's exempt or its impacts, that you have to describe the whole of the project, including all of its reasonably foreseeable consequences or reasonably foreseeable aspects. And appellant Ibsen claims that this project actually involves additional development in an additional parcel regarding the Hoyer parcel. That parcel is not included in the project site. It's not part of the application, and there's no current development plans for that project associated with this project. It's not reasonably foreseeable that it should be analyzed as part of this project. The Hummer, Mr. Hummer, in the Hummer appellant Hummer, raised a number of the 7 points, and I'll just briefly, mention that, and the staff did a great job, and we concur with all the staff's responses. In fact, we submitted a detailed letter on January 17th responding to all of the 3 CEQA-related appeals and demonstrating they were without merit. All of these points raised by Mr. Hummer were refuted by staff and also in our letter. The only one I really wanted to note on was he said that we need 80. He claimed that we need 81 units to make the project financially feasible, and he's misremembering what happened before the Planning Commission. Financial feasibility came up because I argued and continue to argue that if the 5 conditions of approval are imposed on the project, and we have evidence from PlaceWorks demonstrating that those would create a significant financial burden, which would require a reduction in the density of the project, and that is prohibited by the Housing Accountability Act. This financial feasibility is a density bonus and Housing Accountability Act issue. It's not a CEQA issue. In fact, CEQA is about environmental impacts, not economic impacts. Lastly, and I can't pronounce or remember the name of the third appellant that spoke before me, but she claimed that the staff got it wrong, and that her appeal was based on traffic hazards, not parking. But then she went on to say right after that the traffic hazard is related to people who allegedly will need to find additional parking on Stranahan. So it is a parking issue, and as staff pointed out, parking, the inadequacy or underparked nature of a project is not a CEQA, necessarily a direct CEQA impact. More importantly, the evidence in the record, the only substantial evidence based on consultants' estimates and expert opinion is that the project is not underparked. There will be 86 parking spots will be enough to cover the parking demand for the project. That's what the evidence in the record says. So CEQA does not allow you to consider, or does not, CEQA does not allow you to consider speculation or claims of impacts that aren't backed up by any facts or expert opinion based on facts. And lastly, the concern about fire or wildfire impacts that the appellant raised. CEQA was amended recently to require new projects to analyze potential wildfire-related impacts, but the exemption that we're talking about and that this appeal is about does not raise wildfire impacts as one of the criteria. It's only noise, air, traffic, and water. And so it's really not relevant. More importantly, and not to diminish her concern, But this is an existing problem with if everyone in the town had to leave immediately to evacuate a wildfire, that would cause congestion and confusion and concern. It would happen in every city. It's not a result of this project. It's not an impact caused by this project. It's really also not a relevant issue that should be considered, and certainly doesn't negate the project's qualification for an exemption. So that leaves us with our appeal and my effort to demonstrate to you why the project should be approved with the density bonus, concessions, and waivers that have been requested. By the way, again, you don't have to take just my word for it. Staff agrees that all the criteria and conditions to support the concessions and waivers that have been requested are made and supported, can be made and are supported by the evidence in the record, and that there's no evidence in the record to support denying those concessions, waivers, or the project overall. The key provisions of the Housing Accountability Act that I wanted to bring to your attention is that if the housing application is consistent with the city's objective development standards, it must be approved unless specific findings are made. Those specific findings are that despite its consistency, that there is some specific adverse impact to public health and safety or in the environment. Staff has already demonstrated to you conclusively that the project is consistent with the city's development standards and that there are no impacts. That's why there's an environmental exemption from CEQA. Projects are consistent. This is another issue, policy or provision from the Housing Accountability Act is projects are consistent with development standards if there's substantial evidence that would allow a reasonable person to conclude the project complies. Project conditions of approval must facilitate and accommodate development at the density permitted on the site. And this is the point I tried to make earlier, is that Housing Accountability Act precludes conditions which would impose additional costs, which would force the developer to lop off units or reduce density. The Housing Accountability Act precludes that. The city bears the burden of proof if it wanted to deny the project or reduce the density. And as staff demonstrated, all the conditions for the density bonus, concessions, and waivers are met, and there's no evidence to deny them. And then lastly, not to convince you to approve the project by threat of litigation, but there are provisions in the Housing Accountability Act that improper denial or density reduction can result in attorney's fees awards and penalties. Mayor, can I ask how much time is left?
46 seconds, 45 seconds.
Of the 15 minutes?
Yeah.
So, the cities, and if you allow me 1 minute.
Guys.
In response, we have, a bill has sought projects and been turned down and wasn't discouraged, came back with different projects, worked with the city, got all the reports and paid the city's peer review as well as his own consultants. We're not here to just tell you delete the mitigation or the conditions of approval. I'm not waiving my objection that there's no basis to impose them and that if you did, they would be costly. He met with the city manager and said, please bring us a solution.
Excuse me, audience. It's my prerogative. Let him finish his sentence, please. Let him finish his sentence.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just end by saying, we in the spirit of compromise, I delivered to all of you modifications to the conditions of approval, the language to those conditions of approval, so that they need not be stricken. And if you wanted to include them, we would encourage you to use that language, which would not impose undue financial imposition on the applicant, and would allow the density that's being proposed to be developed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We did just get these revised conditions or suggested revisions to the conditions this afternoon. Those will go into the consideration, but most of us had not had a chance to read them before we received them on the dais tonight, because they came in after 4 o'clock this afternoon. So those are the statements by the appellants. And we will now go to the public comment. And no, because if we take 10 minutes, we'll never get started again. If people need to get up to go to the restroom, go. But no, not all at once, please. But in fairness to the audience members, we really do want to get to the public comment. They're just as cold as we are. So I don't know about you guys, but we've got a cold draft blowing straight down on us. It's freezing in here, so colder than normal. So we will, and if anybody else has a comment, please get them to your blue card to Janet. I'm going to start going through the cards in the order I received them. So the first speaker is Susan Allen, to be followed by Brian Bedell, to be followed by John Noons, something like that? Okay, thank you. Susan.
Susan Allen, I live in Dana Hills. The Olivia on Marsh Creek Apartments project, also known by neighbors as the three-story behemoth apartments, will have catastrophic and lasting effects on our lovely Clayton. Tiny Marsh Creek Road is already dangerous for us and our children who walk, run, and bike to the elementary school, middle school, park, town center, library, CVS, our town's trails, and Mount Diablo. These are two quick personal examples. Number one, my husband was headed home to Dana Hills, heading south on Tiny Marsh Creek Road. Two small children were teetering on their bikes in the bike lane. My husband stopped his car because he was concerned for their safety. Right then, the little girl fell off her bike right into the front of his car. Now, she wasn't hurt, but that's a tiny little Marsh Creek Road. That's tiny, and then it has a little bike lane. Okay, number two, I was driving north on Tiny Marsh Creek Road near the entrance to the Stranahan development when a teenager with headbuds on stepped right into the path of my car. She was oblivious to the fact that she could easily have been hit. This is what's happening right now on that little tiny street. Now, just imagine a behemoth three-story apartment building on that same tiny little street. Continue imagining a second behemoth three-story apartment building next to the one that I just mentioned on that same tiny little street. Now imagine three-story behemoth apartment buildings on that same tiny little street. Now imagine, if you will, all the issues that will be compounded on that tiny little Marsh Creek Road with those three-story behemoth apartment buildings. Our children's safety, traffic congestion, overflow parking, and of course, the desirability of our lovely little Clayton is gone for good. Please, council members, for the future of Clayton, don't make a behemoth mistake. Do not approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Brian Bedell, then John Noons, then Marcy Longchamps. Brian.
Good evening, Mayor. I moved to Clayton back in 2015. And one of the reasons I moved here is because it didn't have places like this. It wasn't for the ridiculously long commute that I have to endure. It wasn't for the higher home prices. It was because we don't have things like this. Now, I could go on and on about things that have been talked about already, about how the obvious impacts that this project would have that are apparent to everyone except apparently people who are blind or an attorney from Oakland who's hired by Bill Jordan. But I want to address something different, and that's what really caused this, and that's the zoning. When I just moved here, in 2017, in May of 2017, I addressed this council for the very first time when you were considering a rezoning issue. At that time, I warned specifically that this is going to lead to things like a three-story building downtown. Then Councilman Dave Shuey called it hyperbole. Mayor Pierce, you laughed at me. Well, guess what? It's happening. And I would like to say I'm getting the last laugh. But being wrong, there's nothing funny about it, because this is a project that is going to negatively impact this town forever. So to the extent you may rely on the idea that, well, we're trapped. The state caused this. The state didn't cause you to change those zoning rules. You decided to change those zoning rules. And to the extent you caused this problem, you damn well better figure out a way to fix it. Because when you stood up at the beginning of this meeting, Mayor, and you said, well, we want to do what's best for Clayton. I think there's a whole lot of people behind me that know what's best for Clayton, and it ain't this.
Excuse me. Please, no applause, no booing, no comments. We're going to be orderly about this.
So what you need to do is you need to do the right thing. You need to figure out what's wrong, because I will tell you, if you don't, if you put your name on this, and your name, it might as well, if you approve this, it might as well not be called the Olivia. It might as well be called the Diaz, Wolf, Pierce, Juan, or Catalano. You will be held accountable in November when you are up for re-election. That you can count on.
Thank you, Brian. The next speaker is John Naines. Please, we will not have applause or booing. Everyone has the right to an opinion.
I'm sure they'll clap for me when I'm done. I'm sure they will. My name is John Nunes. I'm a senior citizen, and I spoke before. I find that this is, I'm shocked they didn't get bomb shelters in this plan, because, I mean, they're saying they're not there. I mean, I can't imagine all the things they've talked about that really like the parking issue. As a senior citizen, I would love to be in the project, because it caters, Mr. Jordan is catered to the senior citizen. He's built units for them. One thing they haven't mentioned, that they have mothers and fathers are getting older now in Clayton. In my family, I've been asked to move in with my family and sell my house. In a lot of families, if you have any brains, you wouldn't move in with your family. You wouldn't want to move in with them. This is a case where it's a perfect, beautiful complex. Somebody said it was ugly. I find it's very attractive. I find it's very convenient for a senior citizen. Number one, another thing about parking. Parking for a senior citizen, I'm trying to give my car away. In Clayton, in this project, I wouldn't have to drive. And another thing, when you're a senior citizen, you don't need 2 cars, and you sure don't want 3 or 4 people living in the unit. We want to be independent. We want to be by ourselves. And I would hate to see that you would take discrimination against elderly people and put us out of the community, because people don't see the value of elderly people. And they would take their mothers and fathers and send them other places, when you have a beautiful project right down Clayton that you could have senior citizens in a secure neighborhood with minimum travel. We don't drive night and day. I came out tonight, but normally I don't drive between 10 and 2, because the rest of the time it's a nightmare driving around any town. And last but not least, I haven't heard a project in any area that doesn't bring up parking. Thank you. You can clap now.
Thank you, John. I'm serious. Please, let's limit that. Okay? Marcy, and then Allison Snow, and then Dee Vieira.
Hello, my name is Marcy Longchamps, and I reside on Coyote Circle. I have lived in my home for 35 years, and yes, I am a senior. I have my own opinions, and you can count on me to speak with honesty and heart. I do not consider myself to be an elitist, a NIMBY, or one of those people in any group. I strive to have integrity in most all that I do, and doing the right thing is a high priority for me. When it comes to our elected officials, they would do well to remember the following. that the people voted for these individuals to represent them when it comes to making decisions when it concerns them and their city. That these elected officials have a moral, legal, and ethical responsibility and obligation to represent the people. And finally, that these elected officials have the same responsibility and obligation to be 100% transparent in all their communications with their constituents. Anything less would create a sense of mistrust. So now the Jordan Project, and here is my opinion. This is our town, and we are fighting to keep it that way. I do not want this behemoth built in my city of Clayton. Mr. Jordan and his lawyers did not impress me at the last Planning Commission meeting. There were several items that he was unwilling to do that would benefit the town of Clayton proper. From what I observed, Mr. Jordan and his attorneys were quite aggressive. I felt as if they were almost threatening the commission, which was really rather frightening to me. This is not the first time the city council has cited state mandates and state requirements. Then there is always the alleged threat of lawsuits and litigation. There are many, many, many residents of Clayton who do not want this project to go through. We are letting our voices be heard right here, right now. Tensions are growing, and there are lots and lots of very bad feelings circulating throughout Clayton. The City Council must do its job as elected officials and listen to its constituents. Do the right thing this time. Please do the right thing. Thank you.
All right, the next speaker is Allison Snow, then Dee Vieira, and then Diane Selmer. Did Allison leave?
Yes, I did see her leave.
I saw her go out the door. I didn't know if she was maybe in the hallway. Okay, then we'll go to Dee Vieira, to be followed by Diane Selmer.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Dee Vieira, and I am an almost 10-year resident in Dana Hills. Can you hear me? I first wanted to bring up that I found an error in the planning minutes on page 2. It's from the December 10th meeting. You had listed Sonia Traus with Yimby Law as opposed to the project when she in fact is for the project. So if you can remove that and put it in the right place. I just have a few thoughts. First, I have given much thought to this proposal over the past months. I have listened to the oppositions and support of this project, and for me it comes down to what's happening in California with regards to the housing crisis and where Clayton fits in. Do I think this project will fix the housing problems? No, but I do think there is a need for more housing options. It's important, and I think Clayton should do their fair share to put housing near town and transportation. Clayton is still closer to work in BART than residents living in Stockton, Tracy, and Brentwood, where single-family homes are abundant, and their lives are spent hours commuting. Building on infill lots is environmentally right, and it's the right thing to do. Second, what I am interested in hearing from those of you who will pass or deny this project are your undeniable, legally supported, factual reasons, whether it be for the density, height, traffic, parking, or safety. I'm hoping this meeting does not drag out into the late hours. And last, I have heard from Captain George Lang from the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District. The concern over the 2-ladder versus the 3-ladder appears to be a non-issue with fires to the building. Seems a pretty standard response time to any of our emergency needs with or without this project. And with that, I'd like to submit the letter from the captain. For the record, I omitted my email because I don't want that to be public. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. The next speaker is Diane Selmer, to be followed by Teresa Jordan.
Hello, Mayor. My name is Diane Selmer. I've been in Clayton and Regency Woods for over 41 years. I've raised 3 sons, went to high school. I have grandsons in Clayton Valley High School, and I will have great-grandchildren in elementary. I have worked on so many projects in Clayton and pursue that we keep taking care of it. And I want to pledge or appeal to you about this project. Mr. Jordan, your property looks like. I was hoping that it would get some kind of a small building project, and that's what I heard in the first place. But a monstrosity like this could not work. These children are riding up and down the streets. We go to Diablo. I live off of El Molino, so Marsh Creek. So it's traffic to the Diablo school, traffic to the elementary school, and they don't follow the speed limit. You know, in the morning it's like, and if it's a rainy day, I can even imagine more. 55-year-old people are still working. I'm 70 years old and I'm still working part-time. But what I'm trying to tell you is the car situation is so bad now. We need something. I'm not going to deny that. It came up with a smaller project. It sounded like it made sense. And all of a sudden now we have all this. So what I would like to say at the ending is we need to appeal this. We can't let this go. We can't. Make it smaller, make it livable, and get the money that you need to get out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. The next speaker is Teresa Jordan, followed by Dana Pinella? Okay. You know who you are.
Yes. I'm Teresa Jordan, and I am the mother of Bill Jordan, and I'm very proud of him. And when I heard the city manager say, yes, family does count, and I'm here too to stand up for my son, because here I know the majority of you
speak into the mic so we can all hear you.
All right. But I want to say that this project, even though many here think that it may not be conducive to Clayton, I do believe that because I've been with Bill every step of the way on this project, and he's always asked my opinion, and I'm a very conservative person, and I went for all his, different revisions to make this work. And my son builds beautiful homes. In fact, he built my home, my husband's home, who's not here now. But we live on the top of Peacock Creek, and I've seen Bill's house. He has a beautiful home, and I've seen many of the other homes and projects that he has completed and been very much approved and complimented by his integrity and his willingness to improve the neighborhood. And I think that he knew that he would probably get some, objections to this, but I give him a lot of credit for his courage, and he stands up for what he feels that's going to be good for Clayton. I love Clayton. Bill moved us here 20 years ago, and I'm quite old now, but I do get around. I go to the post office quite often, and it's strange, but I don't see any of the hazards that, as far as the speeding 60 miles an hour. I've never seen that. And I think that the citizens here and the parents here are very good parents. And I don't think that they would allow their children to be unattended or to be on on any street, less, Marsh Creek Road. No, I think that a lot of this has been projected as to be, maybe a negative, but I want all of you who haven't a chance to hear my voice, that I do feel that it's going to be fine, and I'm pretty confident too that I can feel that I could be strong enough to get up, knowing the opposition, and
thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank you so
too.
much for your comments.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Dana, followed by Bob Hoyer, followed by Douglas Rogers.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, council members. And my name is Dana Pinalla, and I live on Stranahan Circle. I've been there for almost 2 years, so a new resident to the community of Clayton. And I wrote down a couple notes so that I could be concise here, but I just wanted to start with the fact that the reason my husband and I and our family decided to move here is because of the quietness of the town, and specifically where we had the proximity to downtown. We walk all the time from our house to downtown, and yes, there are times where I feel like it's already unsafe. We take precautions. Yes, with all due respect, Mrs. Jordan, I do take precautions and watch my children, especially on busy streets. But what's nice about Clayton is that I don't have to be a helicopter parent, and that they do have the ability to walk and ride their bikes and live in a community. One of my neighbors eloquently described our quaint neighborhood earlier, and why it is so wonderful and why we bought our home was because all of our children are outside in the streets. Sitting next to my neighbor today, and all the time, it's like all I have to do is hear her little boys outside, and I send my kids out to play. And I just have a huge concern about the impact of this building on the reason we spent our money and we pay our taxes to live in this town. And I just think it will have a huge impact. And I wasn't at the last planning commissioners meeting. I wasn't able to be here, but I was at the one in November. Mr. Jordan stood up here, and Mr. Jordan said that he wanted to build something that was good for Clayton. Well, I think that from all the meetings I've attended and all the meetings that other people have attended, and especially tonight, the majority of the people representing Clayton, and I definitely represent Stranahan Circle, do not believe that this building is what's good for Clayton. So if Mr. Jordan truly does want to do something that he quote unquote said he wanted his kids to look at and say, oh, my daddy built that, and be proud of, I don't think that this building is it. Now, I'm not a secret attorney. I'm not, a community developer director, Dana. Might have the same name, but I don't have your status. But I do know that it's just, for me, common sense. You add that many people, you only give that many parking spots. I have all of the, respect in the world for senior citizens, and I'm not trying to kick them out. I'm thinking that this project is not for senior citizens. It's for 55 plus. And I have lots of friends who are in their 50s and have young children and are parents and still working full time. So I just have this concern that the impact it's going to make. So one thing that I will put out there is that I just haven't seen the proof, nor have any of us seen the proof or the reasonings on that, how it will not have an impact on the traffic and the parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. The next speaker is Bob Hoyer, followed by Douglas Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council. I agree 100% with what the elderly gentleman said that spoke a few minutes ago. But there's nobody any older than me here. And we need a place to move to when we're sick and tired of mowing lawns and taking care of gardens and so on, but we still want to live in Clayton. And this development gives us a perfect opportunity to do that. Clayton doesn't have any rental apartments. Clayton should have its fair share of the housing problem. Clayton should have its fair share of rental units so that elderly people, and there are many of them are coming along because I know when they moved into to Dana Hills years and years ago, and when they moved into Regency and Stranahan even, is many years old, they're getting older. They don't want a house, they want somewhere to move into and still live in Clayton. If we don't have some rental units like this, they'll have to leave Clayton. They'll have to live somewhere else. Some of the people who talk here tonight would be against anything being built here. Anything. Even one house, I dare say, which is ridiculous. Clayton Incorporated to be a city to provide for the people, all kinds of people, not those who are against any kind of building. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. The next speaker is Douglas Rogers, to be followed by Marie DePlazis.
Hello. I just want to start off by saying that this planning or the development commissioner or whatever he's called, the staff is not impartial in the reports, okay? There's things that come to mind, and that is that staff fast-tracked this project, okay? Directed people to work late in the evening on Friday night and submitted it to the Planning Commission after 10:30 p.m. Friday night before a 3-day weekend, okay? My question is, why was this project given special consideration, and why was staff directed to work late into the evening on Friday night to complete it? And my feeling is that it's because they overlook things, like calling it a senior housing project, where in fact it's 80% people 55 and older and 20% any age, okay? So somebody wants to get elderly and move in, they could have a 20-year-old renting next to them. So that's a key point. It's not a senior-only project, and I object to it being billed by, the staff as that. Okay, it's totally misrepresenting it. I had a bunch of things to say, but now I need to move on. Kimberly Horn provided the parking data for the Olivia, and on their website, they state, return on investment is a developer's top priority, and Kimberly Horn will maximize the value of the property. Okay, so that's the type reports they accepted. That's not bias. Look at it. That's what they say they do. That's what they do. They provide evidence that will substantiate anything he wants. Okay. It also states that the actual parking demand for the Olivia is 50% at 90. That means 180 spaces are needed. Now, according to the attorney, and I realize that you can't deny the project on parking spaces, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about the parking spaces, because here's the reason to deny the parking, or the project as it stands with inadequate parking. What is going to happen is cars are going to park in Stranahan. They're going to block the streets. We already saw $20,000 for parking permits, okay? What's that do to the people's property value in Stranahan? But that's not a reason to deny it. So people crowd there. There's not bicycle lanes. The street's going to be full of cars, and kids and anybody riding a bicycle is going to be threatened by the traffic, okay? What the city will do is they will eliminate the bicycle lane on Marsh Creek Road. So the Olivia residents can park there, correct? We saw that on Center Street. And now parking was not on both sides. It is now. There's no bicycle lane. And I just want to say that the other thing is environmental degradation, okay? It does not meet the lot landscaping requirements, 1 tree per 150 square feet, 1 tree per 3 parking spaces. He's doing less trees, smaller trees than is required. So.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
2 things. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I have 2 cards left, Marie DePlazis and Jim Gamble. If anyone else wishes to speak, please fill out your blue card and give it to Janet. Thank you. Marie.
Hello, my name is Marie DePlazis, and I wasn't planning on speaking this evening. I don't like getting up and talking in front of people. I do want to say one thing because I am a senior, and in the state of California, people now are retiring at 63 and 64, not 55. I just recently retired, and on my street alone, there are 7 homes. And I believe all of them, if I'm not insulting anybody that's in this room that lives on the same street as I believe we're all 55 and over. And we all have the minimum of 2 vehicles. Some of us have 3 vehicles. And according to Data USA, the following chart displays the households in Clayton, California, distributed between a series of car ownership buckets compared to the national averages for each bucket. The largest share of households in Clayton, California have 2 cars, followed by 3. So would a complex that only has 1 parking space per unit really do the trick? No, I do not believe so. And what would this create? It would create complete havoc on the streets. As it is right now going down Center Street, you have little kids that could come out. It's very crazy going down right by the post office. You never know when some child's going to jump out. That's the only point I wanted to point out, is that I think any report or, information that they got from some group that provided information on parking where 1 would suffice, that's incorrect. This is right out of Data USA and was dated 2018. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Marie. And the last speaker card I have is for Jim Gamble. Oops, one more coming.
I wasn't going to say too much about the development because it's probably going to happen, but what I'd like everybody here to hear that isn't normally here is that I was part of a group with some of the other people from Save Clayton that killed the Fulcrum development that would have been already being built or built already. So this would have been the second 3-story behemoth building in town. Get ready for it, folks, because these other lots, like the vacant lot over there across the street, that 2-story empty big box building behind the bocce ball courts could be converted into condos, which Ms. Catalano's firm does that kind of stuff. And getting back to that, I'm really ramped up because we always get our pre-scolding by Mayor Pierce and by Tuia Catalano before we even have our chance to have our public comment. And I find it really the epitome of, I don't know, I thought we left that kind of stuff in England, a couple hundred years ago, but apparently we haven't. I really resent being pre-scolded and then told not to clap or, show support by just coming up here blindly and I really don't think the development's very good. And doing these little meek things like this. These are personalities. These are people that live in this town. And we have to live with your decisions. And we're getting kind of tired of that. And we're really, really tired of being pre-scolded. So everybody needs a place to live. That's great. It'll shake itself out. But folks, get ready for downtown because they're going to build more down there. It's going to be high-density housing because they have some type of dream that they can get some Trader Joe type place down there, and we can have a little mini Danville or Walnut Creek. So get ready for it.
Thank you, Jim. Let me ask you a question. Kent, did you want to speak a second time?
The first one was for my appeal.
Yeah. Did you want to speak under public comment? Okay. All right. Come on up. I thought that was for your appeal.
Kent Ibsen, 6061 Clayton View Lane, 51 years here in town. and 45 years with our family business, and which is the opener. I'm excited about people coming to town. It helps business and it helps the community, and I think the general gist we're getting is that this is just not the right fit. So I remember when we were at my dad's house, Julie, and after the 4th of July, I sat there with Pete, pleaded, please do not rezone this property this way. This is going to be a massive problem. He says it's never going to happen. 10 years, never's here. 10 years is exactly what I had anticipated. And so now we have a dilemma. And I think when I came before the council and I spoke, I think 2 of you were on the planning commission and 1 of you were on the city council. I pleaded with you to not change the zoning on this property. And now look at absolute, complete, and total public outrage. Unfortunately, not enough people come out for zoning hearings, and they come out when they see big pictures of massive buildings. And some of the horses are already out of the barn at that time. But now we have a situation in how are we going to address it. With regard to the parking, that's kind of been beat down, but some of the numbers that are being picked are selective, because on page 178 in the right-hand margin, the city's consultants have a disclaimer right there. It says, this project will have people parking on High Street and in the Stranahan project. It's from your own consultants. So it's not like smoke and mirrors. It's not like this guy said this and we take 50% of that and the derivative and come up with some number. The report said they're parking on the street. So you're going to knowingly and willingly park people on the street with the approval of this. So what I want to circle back on is I'm not anti everything. If it was reasonable and sensible and fit within this community, the first project Mr. Jordan showed me or talked to me about it in my backyard. It's 15 units and I went to 20. Now it's significant. So in closing, I just think we are a little bit, it looks like a gun's pointed at the council, and what you're looking back at is we have all the rules and we have all the rights to us, and if we don't get it, we're going to sue you. Well, you guys kind of put us in this position 10 years ago when you changed the zoning. So now I think it's time to stand up and make it right.
Okay, the next speaker is Karen Hallibone, followed by Alan Chan, followed by Wendy Laughlin, followed by Dan Hummer.
Hi, I'm Karen Hallibone. I grew up in Clayton. We moved out here in 1977. So I've seen a lot of changes. Well, some good changes. Can't hear me? Okay. So I've been out here since 1977, and I have seen Clayton go through a lot of changes. And I know that with growth, there has to be change. But I think that this project is not right at all. It doesn't look right aesthetically. It doesn't fit into the community. They say it's going to be a 55 and older, but do they have elevators? And what's to keep them from converting it into condos? Because right now, sounds good. Oh, we can put some senior citizens in there. My mom would love to go into something like that, sure. But at the same time, when they go to convert it to condos, those senior citizens are now ousted and have to find a new home. So what in any of this is going to stop them from doing that? Aside the fact that you are going to absolutely kill the businesses in Clayton because there won't be any parking for their patrons. So right now, they have a couple little small private parking lots. They already have signs up there, private parking for the hair salon where I go. So these places are going to be killed. You're always talking about wanting to encourage new businesses coming to Clayton. Well, you can forget that if this project comes in, because these people aren't going to just all of these 81 units have people go down there and walk and use Clayton, because all the other people that come outside or that live too far to walk are not going to be able to find parking spaces, because they will all be taken up by all of these people, their families, and the people that come to visit them. So it's not just 81 spaces. It's to accommodate the families too. And the 20% of people that are going to be moving in there that aren't 80 years old or 55 years old, they're going to have at least 2 to 3 cars. And once your kids hit a certain age, you're talking a 3rd and 4th car. So good luck to all of that. But you need to be listening to what your people want, and it is not that project. something smaller scale, something that fits in aesthetically with the old-fashioned frontier, I'd be all for that, but not this. This is a monstrosity, and it's going to be a horrible mark on Clayton. Will not help them in any way, shape, or form, and it definitely won't help any of you at re-election time. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Alan Chan, followed by Wendy Laughlin, followed by Dan Hummer, and that is the last card I have right now.
Mayor and Vice Mayor and Council Member, I want to come and speak about an objective opinion of mine. I'm in healthcare, and I have seen how neighborhoods have strongly object to having residential homes for psychiatric treatments and other chemical dependency and other types of special need in our communities. And in this project itself, what I'm really seeing is it really provides housing for seniors. Seniors like my mother is 86 years old. Seniors for all our patients that comes and I see that I'm in touch with. We have a baby boomer population that's growing older every year. We need housing like this. And seeing in perspective throughout this Contra Costa area, I don't think this is too big of a project. There's a reason why in California housing cost is what it is today. And there's a reason why we putting such an emphasis on it, because without projects like this, people will be moving out of California. And I think Clayton is a beautiful city where seniors can live in a place like this with probably not doing a lot of driving, contributing to traffic, what we talked about today. I have spoke to Mr. Jordan at one point, and I seen the work and the thought that he's putting into this project itself. I think it's the right thing to do. I do want to acknowledge in terms of what people are feeling in this room, the residents here, it is an adjustment. However, it is the right thing to do because our seniors need a place to live.
Thank you, Alan. The next speaker is Wendy Laughlin, and the last card I have so far is Dan Hummer.
Hi, Wendy Laughlin. I live in Stranahan. I'm not going to make this long. I just want to throw in I agree with everything that they're saying. A couple things I did want to let you guys know is I thought the Planning Commission did a really good job. I did go to all those meetings. Frank Gavidia mostly, I think, did a lot of excellent research, and I felt more educated after learning what he brought to the table as well as what I learned from Mr. Jordan. Mr. Jordan did also make a couple statements that he does intend to sell down the road. I don't know when that is, but that is out there. So he did make that very clear. I live right across the street. They did also mention trying to do some sort of a parking permit for Stranahan, which my kid rides his bike to school every day, rides home with his friends, like everybody was saying. I just want to know who's going to enforce that parking permit. So does that mean more police officers? Officer Pike's going to be coming in 4 times a day now instead of once? I'm not quite sure, but that's important to me because I don't really want to deal with a parking permit if it's not going to be enforced. And we have guests over almost every weekend. So there's at least 2 or 3 extra cars at our house alone, not to mention my neighbors. So, and yeah, I think it's too big. I don't think it's the right spot. I think any other spot in Clayton, if we could try to find something else, I would love to preserve that area for just historical purposes if we can. Maybe have the city buy it back and try to do something different with it. I don't know, but I feel like we're at a dead end here, and a lot of people aren't happy with it. And if we could find something that everybody agrees on, maybe you'd have more support. So, thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. The last speaker I have is Dan Hummer. Whoops, there's another one coming.
Round 2.
Ready?
I'm Dan Hummer. Spoke earlier. I just wanted to reiterate as far as what Ket Impson brought up in regards to the other plots to potentially being developed and exercising those rights and everything like that. You know, that is on public record that's not being developed at this particular point, right? Otherwise, this would have to be included into this. It would be
Dan,
more than
speak
5
toward
acres.
the microphone,
I'm sorry.
please?
So it would have to
Otherwise,
be.
we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. So it's indicated that it was on public record that it was not being developed right now, and that it's not included. Those other parcels are not included. Just want to make sure that that's stated on public record. That is, and is there any way of potentially, helping negate this sort of thing going onto those 3 other parcels or however many parcels are left? Because otherwise, it's just going to be absolutely unruly. I do appreciate you, Mr. Jordan, on going through all the stuff that you're going through on trying to get something that is right for Clayton. Once again, as I stated in the other comments, I don't think this is it. I liked your previous attempts. And I'm just kind of appealing to your sensibility on this, that we could go back to the 2 stories, maybe complex that you had, and maybe revising that. I'm not sure. I mean, even though the law says that I can go up to this amount, doesn't mean that I don't think anybody's pointing a gun at you to say that you have to go up to that amount as far as get up to the 81 units and only have this amount of parking. I just kind of appeal to your sensibility on that. So you go smaller, you get more support, even though it's not legally required. We'd appreciate that as a community.
And the last card I have is Steve Olivas. If anyone else wants to speak, turn in a blue card.
Thank you for the second opportunity, equal opportunity to speak. I just wanted to make 2 points. What you heard tonight is opposition based on a lot of emotion, understandable emotion. I live in a similar town. I live on the coast side. We have an ocean, but outside of that, our towns are very similar, and I understand that emotion. But what you also heard is that this project is consistent with every zoning and general plan and town center specific plan requirement that you have, and that decision was made, or whatever, 10 years ago to redesignate it for high-density, multifamily, residential uses. It's consistent with that, and the evidence in the record demonstrates that the concessions and reductions in development standards, we're not asking any to be waived, just reduced to allow this density to be developed. That there's evidence that demonstrates that there's identifiable actual cost reductions from those concessions and waivers, and that if the waivers were not granted, the application of the development standards would preclude the density that's proposed. Secondly, and what I didn't get to when I spoke earlier, was that we are proposing to revise the project to provide 5 more parking spots. I know it's, but it satisfies the number that your own own consultant said was needed to adequately handle the demand from the project. There are constraints on this site. There's hills, and this was the final spots that we could squeeze out. And we met with the engineer and found that there could be 5 more spots. And the materials I sent to you and the revised modifications, the modifications to the conditions of approval is one of the proposed modifications to the project to address these concerns and to satisfy your consultant's request for that amount of parking. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. I think that people should know the history of this project. In 2017, I brought this project to you, or to the staff. It's a 2-story project, beautiful project. Spent a year designing it. This is the project.
Speak to the council, please. Bill, speak to the mic.
Right now. I will. This is my project. And I tried with your staff, Mindy Gentry, to get this thing approved. Now, she said it was too long. It was 150 feet long and exceeded the TCSP zoning. I said, can you give me some flexibility on this thing? You could do that per the code. And it was not acceptable. She writes, the buildings do not necessitate a frontage of 150 feet and all 3 buildings exceed 150 feet along a public street. These are all 1-bedroom units. This would go down to an SRO. You know what an SRO is? It's a single room occupancy with constraints of the hillside, parking. This was my project. And it didn't go. Check it out.
Bill, please address the council.
You know what? I'm taking the hit. I'm taking the hit for it, and you are too. Innocently, because you had no idea what was going on. I did my best, spent a ton of money, and it's been nutty. We've gone through 30 pages just like this, single space on a site plan review. I have held off my attorney and said, I want to work with you guys. It's been the most unfair city to do business with, and it's insulting. I have talked to Ikani and Dana, and I've shared 5 hours worth of testimony with them. The more I sat there, the more their eyes got big. They couldn't believe it. It's so biased. It was so wrong. It was a total sham. And I tell you what, I have done my best, and I will go the distance. I know you don't like the 3-story. I know my neighbors don't. But they didn't have to flip the bill at the end of the day. I did.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, I don't have any more speaker cards, and we're not going to do a second round of comments by people who have already spoken. So unless someone new that has not spoken has a speaker card, we're going to bring it back here to the council. I don't believe Allison Snow came back in, did she? No. Okay. So we are done with the public comment for this evening, and I'm going to bring it to the council, and we are going to make some comments and bring some things to staff to get additional information. And I'm going to start to my left. To you.
I want to make just one comment initially, only because I want to plant something in the developer's head and have them start thinking about something, and then I'll come back with some other comments that I'd like staff to address. So I'm going to start this is a very specific comment that I would like you to look into. I get how CEQA works. I understand how state density bonus law works regarding waivers and parking. I get that. However, putting that aside, and before your attorney jumps up, many of the residences here had concerns about parking adequacy. I get the background, believe me. I strongly agree with that. I think you need to have more parking for a couple of different reasons. Last week, when I got my packet, I think it was on Tuesday, I took a really hard look at your site plans. I'm not an architect, however, I've read a fair share of my plans, on project plans. What I wanted to go look at, is it physically possible for you to add more parking on the site itself without additional costs or significant costs and without changing the project significantly? The conclusion I came to is that I think it is possible. I think you can do that, and I think the solution is by tandem parking. I appreciate you coming back with the conditions of approval that added 5 parking spaces. I think you can do more. And again, without really adding any more cost and without changing your project significantly. So what I did is I printed your site plans, and then I did my chicken scratches on top of it, and I'm gonna give it to the city clerk or city manager, and they can share this with you afterwards and put it in the record. And these are just extremely rough drafts. And further, this is a revision that I think you can do without reducing the density and without adding costs or significant costs. So what I did is on site number 3. So I don't think people can see it, and we'll put it in the record. But site number 3 currently has what I roughed out at least a 20-foot setback to the south of it. If you look at where the building is situated, I think you can easily add at least 6 parking spaces without even moving the footprint of the building. And I think that's where you probably added the 3 spaces that you're talking about in the conditions. I think if you move the building, whatever, 10 feet, 15 feet south and reduce the setback on the south side, I think you can add a full row of tandem parking. That's 14 additional parking spaces. So I'd like you to look at it. And then I looked at the topographical maps. I don't think it really cuts into the hillside more. So I don't think this is a more costly option for you. And it's simply moving the building more south. In terms of site number 2, you have, I think, a slight setback on the north side right before your C3 drainage. I think there's maybe 3 to 5 feet there. It's a little tighter site, but on the south side, you have probably a 10 plus foot setback as well. So I think this one, in order to add more parking, you're going to need to move the building. But I think the same thing, if you squeezed in a little bit more and looked at the setback on the north side, if you looked at the setback on the south side and moved the building and adjusted the parking a little bit, I would love for you to look at whether you can add more parking. I think if you added a full row of tandem parking, I'm speaking of tandem parking, not independently accessible parking. So back-to-back 2 parking spaces. That row is 16 spaces. So I would love for you to look at whether you can add more parking to the site. And based on rough calculations, it could be up to 14 spaces on site number 3 and up to 16 spaces on site number 2. So I think, so that's my comment, and I want to plant that in you because I want you and your team to look into that. I get the background, but I think for the community and also for your project, I think you want more parking. That, if you could add up to 30 spaces, that brings it to, you got 117 bedrooms. That would be a total of 116 parking spaces. I think, anyway, so I'm willing to give, from my perspective, I'm willing to give you the time you need to look at that. I think you can do it fairly quickly. But if it takes a couple of months for you to look at, I'm happy to provide you the time. If it takes a couple of continuances for you to come back, but I think you can do it quickly. I think you can look into it, and I'm hoping that you'll come back with a positive response. So I just want to leave that out there and leave it with that.
Okay. And so you're going to give that to staff, and staff will then be in touch with Mr. Jordan to pursue that and sit down and see what might be viable there. Okay. I'm just going to come on around the circle. Jeff, you have any questions you want staff to pursue at this time, or?
Are we doing a full, question
We're not
to staff
deliberating
now, or?
at this point. We're asking staff questions and asking for any further information, anything that was brought up under public comment that we would like to have responses back from staff, or additional information that we would like to receive before we deliberate. I think clearly Tuya has just asked an extra question that's going to take some time to respond to. I think that's going to make a big difference to many of us on how we feel about this project. It certainly will make a difference to the people in the audience. And so I think, in all fairness, we need to get some of these questions that have been raised tonight answered before we actually deliberate on the merits of the project. I think that's the fairest thing for everybody in this room. Because I think the concerns that were expressed tonight about parking they're the biggest concerns all of us have. And the economic viability of this project, it seems to me, could be dependent on the amount of parking. Because a lot of people may not want to buy a place or rent a place that doesn't have adequate parking, or where you have to walk a block to carry your groceries. This isn't New York, where people are used to doing that. So I think Tuya's comments are viable and deserve some scrutiny, and see whether we can make that work, because that would make it a more viable project for you. Jeff?
Sure. So I had a couple questions, I have a lot of questions, actually.
Start listing them.
Sure. The planned development zone calls for parcels that are contiguous in nature for the application. So is there any mention of why the application for 3 separate parcels that were not contiguous were on one? That's one. I didn't see that addressed anywhere. So it doesn't seem consistent with the PD zoning for that. I noticed on the staff report the criteria for Class 32 infill for I think the criteria were numbered, but the statute letters them. But it was, I think it was C or number 3. And on the staff report, it describes, I have notes, but it said on the staff report indicated surrounded by residential uses. I think that's what the staff report called for, so I don't have it. But it deviated from the statutory language. And I believe the statutory language calls for substantially surrounded by urban uses rather than residential development. I was wondering why that language was changed. Because when I look at it, it seems like the zoning that surrounds these parcels is not. I'd like to get more clarity around what the definition of urban uses is, and whether or not the adjoining parcels that are zoned rural qualifies for urban, because that seems to conflict with the zoning for the 32 infill. So that's a question. And then I was interested in knowing what the onus was for the city engaging Rainey as a third party, like what the background was on why we chose Rainey. If we had to engage a third party. I think the answer to that will probably spawn a lot more questions. So I'm interested in knowing what the background was on that. There were also a number of reports referenced within the documents from various third parties, but those reports weren't really included in the packet itself. The packet included summaries and communications from the firms and consultants engaged rather than the actual reports themselves. So I think it would be valuable to include the actual reports from everyone who was engaged, plus maybe like a table or a chart that indicates who engaged them, because I think it makes a difference on which entity engaged the consultants. So that would be important, because I know that, like, for example, I think Kimley was engaged by the applicant, and Rainey was engaged by the city, and then there were also like a number of other consultants. So I think it'd be valuable to have all that material kind of in one place. So then also on the staff report, it says that I think one of the items that were indicated was that parking could not occur on the right-of-way on Marsh Creek Road. That's on page 27 of the agenda packet, not of the internal documentation pages. So I have a question about that, whether or not that's accurate. That doesn't seem to be the case. Currently, I believe that there's no signage for parking on Marsh Creek Road. So during events, there's cars all along Marsh Creek. You can kind of fit. It's tight. And then one other question I had was about the conditions, but I know that there's been discussion about the conditions, so I don't think my questions on that are current right now. But I did have questions about the reasonable nexus and proportionality of conditions for approval. So I guess I'd like to explore the contours of what reasonable nexus is, as well as proportionality, because it does seem like there's a disagreement between how we understand what nexus is. In the staff report, we are asserting, or the staff is asserting, that there is a nexus, and I believe the applicant is asserting there's not. So that seems to be a conflict. And then there's discussion about property tax in the staff report as well. So I'm just curious, as a rental unit, I believe the ad valorem taxes will be calculated off of the parcel as a whole rather than any individual units. So I think that'd be important to understand too, as well as the special assessment taxes for all the districts that we have. Let's see. I have others. Let's see. I'd like to understand more about the delineation between concessions and waivers and what separates the two within the density bonus. I think that'd be important. And then also from the appeals that we heard, more information about CEQA approval without an attached project. That seems that the order of operations there. I just want to make sure that we're doing that appropriately. And then I do think that number 4 from Mr. Hummer in his appeal should be addressed. And number 4 was about the preservation of zoning and consistency with the various provisions of the plan that was identified. Let's see. I think I have other I have other questions, but they're not necessarily for staff. So I'll pause there, and I'm going to go through some notes and see if I come up with more.
Okay. Staff's going to have their work cut out for them. Okay, CW.
Okay, so I guess mine are more comments that I'm going to be talking.
We're not
with
deliberating
I know we're not.
tonight.
I know that, and so
I wasn't allowed to make comments. I just did questions.
Just did questions. That's why I'm not going to do any comments. And I
In
do
the
want to get
form of a
chance.
question.
I do want to get a chance to look through the changes here that I received this afternoon. I guess I'll just hold. I'd be interested to see what happens with 2U's proposal here, but. For staff, the question I guess would be: Is the parking within the project bundled together with one parking space per unit, or is that going to be unbundled? In case those that don't have cars will be able to get those spots. And then the other question would be if the Stranahan, if they've even asked for a permit program. If they don't ask for a permit program, are we going to force this on them, or how does that work? If 2U's proposal doesn't work, and then we go to a parking permit program in Stranahan, and they opt out of that, what is the recourse? I do have many other questions about this, and I want to get into the meat of those when we do deliberate. So I'll stop there for now.
Okay, Jim, any questions you want to add?
I have plenty of questions, and I have some opinions that I will not share at this time, but later when it's time for us to share. But clearly, I want to thank, first of all, everybody's input on this issue, because this obviously is something that is going to really impact the long-term issues in Clayton. But parking came through clearly. So I want the staff to do a little more evaluation on the parking, traffic, and the safety aspects. This is going to be a real problem if we don't have some sound statistics on what to do on that. Also, and this is something purely that hit me while we were getting some of this input, and if this truly is a senior project, how do we going to propose to enforce the 55-year-old rule? That's all I have.
And for how long?
Right.
Okay.
Simple and to the point.
Yeah. I'm trying to scribble them all down and think at the same time. So, yeah, let me add another one, then I'll do another round in case people have thought of other things. I specifically wanted to ask a question, and I'm very intrigued by Tuya's idea on the parking. I also wondered, and I'm just going to put it out there. I've shared this with Connie and my colleagues. I want to know whether it's possible that there is space in the AT&T lot immediately adjacent. That lot is so underutilized, the switching station for the AT&T building on the corner. normally has 1, maybe 2 employee cars in it, if that. It used to get a whole lot more use than it does now. I understand they want to retain that. That's their switching location, and they occasionally need to do service in it. But for the most part, that piece of property is empty. And I don't know whether they would be willing to do a ground lease to add additional parking or not. But I'm going to put it out there and say, please investigate. I know Connie and some others have done some investigating. Do we have a problem outside?
I think the police chief is going out.
The chief's got it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is... Okay. I'm going to try to continue my thought. It is very distracting, I understand. But I do think that it bears looking at this big empty lot sitting there that's kind of a hole, and whether they would be interested in sharing that space to allow some more parking. Because realistically, I understand that by law we can only require so much, but that doesn't mean that you can only provide what we legally can require. There have been a lot of...
Gordon's threatening people right now. He just said he wanted to beat the fuck out of me. I didn't do a damn thing.
Stop! Right now.
Gentlemen, sit down.
All of you, sit.
Gentlemen, sit down.
Here's a witness right here.
Sir,
Gentlemen, please, a little bit of decorum. I understand a little decorum would be nice here. Let's take it out of the chamber, please.
I really don't want to have to call the police in for this crowd. We can be civil here. So, as I was saying, there is an empty lot, practically empty. It is owned by the telephone company. They do use it for their switching station, but most of that property is empty all the time. And I think it bears a discussion. I know our city manager has reached out. I know Councilmember Diaz has reached out. He used to work for the phone company. They're willing to sit down and talk at least. So let's find out whether there's a possibility of adding more parking there. As I was saying, Mr. Jordan, while you were out in the hallway, there's a difference between the maximum we can legally demand and what you can offer to the residents of this proposed project. There's a limit on how much we can demand. There is not a limit on what you can propose. And if you can find a way to make the project more viable to prospective tenants because there's more than one parking place per unit, it might be more financially viable. It might be something that is more desired by people. And while people might still object to 3 stories, even though it's up against the hillside, it might not be the problem that many people are perceiving it to be at this point. So I think it's worth a good hard look to see if that's a possibility. Again, I understand what our legal restrictions are, but I think it's really important that we do some honest looking at what's possible there. And I don't know whether you even were aware that that place is usually empty and has been for as long as I can remember. So anyway, it's worth pursuing to see. And then when we come back, Mala, for the next meeting, when we bring all this back to really deliberate, will you make sure we have an outline in that staff report of what we legally can and cannot ask for? So it's really, really clear what our discretion is and is not. And then I'm assuming that staff is going to go over these proposed changes to the conditions and give us some recommendations on that. As I said earlier, this email came out a little after 4 o'clock this afternoon, and most of us did not see this until we got here tonight. And I certainly have not had time to read through or consider carefully what these proposed changes are. So I appreciate the fact that the applicant is proposing to work with us on the conditions versus just saying no, but we need to know what response we maybe will want to be making on those. And those are the questions I had right off the top of my head. And so I'll do one more round to you. You have anything else you want to add?
I do. So I'd like just to have, I don't know if you're doing like a Q&A thing or something like that, but I'd like a couple things, additional things addressed. One of them is the cumulative impact exception under Class 32 exemptions. I think there was considerable confusion even at the Planning Commission especially by one commissioner as to what that really means. And there's CEQA law that refers to probable future projects, but there's case law out there that actually explains what that means, typically referring to projects that have come to an actual environment, have submitted an actual environmental review application. But if you could please elaborate a little bit as to what that cumulative impact exception really means. If you could please explain what piecemealing indicates, give a definition of piecemealing in the CEQA context. If you could please add a definition to substantial evidence as it applies to CEQA exemptions. The whole fact that the record must include facts, reasonable assumptions based on facts or expert opinion based on facts. So if you could include that definition in there. If you could address the condo conversion aspect, specifically there's a specific project in front of us and whether or not there's a future amendment or future request to change the project. Obviously, the project needs to come in front of a commission or council. But if you could please just elaborate a little bit as to what's in front of us and if there are future changes to the project that needs to go a separate process. And then in terms of Mr. Hammer's appeal, that number 4, regarding the consistency with zoning and general plan, in that explanation, there's a case out of Berkeley, Volmer versus City of Berkeley case that specifically addresses general plan and zoning consistency in a state density bonus law context. So if you might want to take a look at that as well. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, I noticed that in the planning packet, they had included the letter from Michael Baker and the associated attachment, but I couldn't find it in our agenda. I don't know if that was, did I miss it?
I saw it.
I don't know. It was like 400 pages, so
Yeah.
I could have easily missed it.
It's a long packet.
But there's a few items that were from this letter, and it looks like we engaged Michael Baker, right? All right. So there's a couple things that they raised that I would like to have addressed. Specifically, why they use Concord for rental rates, the return on investment feasibility that they identified was low, and various assumptions that I think they made without basis, or at least they didn't indicate what basis they were making the assumptions on. There's a couple more about just the rates, but then I think they did identify a couple things that were concerning, and I think Mr. Ibsen mentioned them in his public comment. They do talk about the contiguousness that I had said, but hold on, I'm trying to find the right page. There's a lot. I think towards the end where they do talk about the various parking study and the related impacts, the weaknesses of that study, the time difference or differential, the location differential, the type of environment, the age gap, and how that's gonna differ or cause differences between what the study said and what reality is going to be. So I'd like to see that addressed somewhere meaningfully rather than just in the footnotes of an attachment.
The Michael Baker piece was attachment P.
P?
Yeah.
All right, hold on.
It's 2 segments past the plans. So it's right after the economic analysis of the senior housing project by Placeworks, and then it goes to the Michael Baker piece.
I think my printer ran out because I stopped at N.
Okay.
All right.
It's there.
All right, great. So, yeah, those questions from that kind of derive from there. I don't think we made any effort to address them. So I'd like to.
Okay. Any more questions down here for staff to bring back? Any questions from staff about the requests?
Oh yeah, one extra. In addition to the substantial evidence that you had called out, I think also the fair argument standard and how it applies or does not apply would be useful as well.
Okay, go ahead, Dana.
Thank you. I think I understood most of the questions. Mayor Wan, Vice Mayor Wan, if you could just clarify what information you're requesting on your last point, not the fair argument explanation, but there's the Michael Baker, right? The information you want that analysis brought forward into the staff report, or
yeah,
looking for additional clarification?
For clarity, the Michael Baker.
And this is the parking analysis?
Yeah, on the document, when they reviewed the parking analysis, I think they said, let's see, there should be more discussion about the applicability of this data as it's related to the proposed project. They had questions about the age of the project, if it was comparable. They identified that the entire thing is based on 3 sites in Pennsylvania in 2008. They identified that reality of the current economic conditions require people age 55 to maintain working status, increasing automobile ownership, parking requirements, etc. So it doesn't provide discussion of the local setting that has bearing on parking requirements. This is a rural area, again, identifying rural rather than urban. Limited shopping, employment opportunities, limited transit. These factors influence auto ownership. It says that essentially Project 1's the only site that has available on-street parking, and that's the Marsh Creek that I mentioned earlier. Oh, wait, no, sorry, that's High Street. And that, if Project 2 and 3 parking supply is inadequate, there's no on-street parking available, and residents are going to seek on-street parking in Stranahan. So that's pretty much what our consultant said. So I think that's not really discussed outside of this letter. So I'd like to see what our response to that is. Okay. It says MBI. I'm not sure what. That's it. Michael Baker National. Yeah. MBI's opinions that the project parking analysis doesn't demonstrate the project parking rate is reasonably consistent with California parking experience, nor does it provide sufficient evidence that the significantly reduced parking supply proposed for the project will not cause parking impacts in the adjacent residential neighborhoods. So I don't think we talked about that.
Okay. That's actually attachment R. The economic study is attachment P. This is attachment R.
So in the staff report, it'd be nice to have that addressed, because I think that's pretty, it's pretty on point. So.
And if we can address some more parking places, that might make it moot.
Oh yeah, and the ideas that you both raised, I thought were excellent. So those sound cool.
Okay, so we have a long list of things for staff to work on. I am going to ask the council, first, are you all available for a meeting on March 3rd, which would be our regular meeting the 1st of March?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, the council's all available. Staff, significant folks, you guys all available? Okay. appellants and applicant, March 3rd. Everybody available to come? I see Dan, Kent? Yes? Okay. I could barely see you back there and you're smiling, but I don't know if you're smiling yes or no. Okay, and Arena is back there, okay. So what I would propose, because we've given a long list tonight, and many of our discussions are going to hinge on the answers to the questions that we get, and I've already asked staff if they would be prepared to put most of these answers in writing so that they're in the packet and everybody can read them ahead of time and be fully prepared and understanding what's going on. We will continue the public hearing to that date. I do not want everyone to come back up and say the same things they said tonight. If you have issues that you find from the new material and would like to address those, I can't stop you from saying the same things you said tonight, but in the interest of everybody getting through this, it would be wonderful if we could have an intelligent, respectful discussion about it, and hopefully with a lot more information so that we know what we're looking at. And we're hoping to have some good news coming out of this with some potential project improvements before we deliberate what we will do with this appeal. So with that, we will close out this evening's discussion, but not the public hearing. It will be continued to a date certain of March 3rd at 7 p.m. here in this room. And as I said, the public hearing will still be open technically. So that is it for item 8A for this evening. We will go to item 10, council items. That's limited to council requests and directives for future meetings. Anything for future meetings that we've not already put on the tickler file?
Well, I'd like to take a look at the when we take a look at the sensitive land use exemption in the downtown area to see what the limits are there and whether or not there should be some action on that. Whether or not we should take a look at repealing that, what our legalities are based on that sensitive land use exemption downtown.
I got you covered with my December request.
Yeah, I think we already did that, but okay. That was a
Good,
second for that.
Then
So
I second that.
Okay, very good. Any other items for future council meetings? Hearing none, we have no closed sessions. We are therefore adjourned. Thank you all very much for your comments and helping us out to a better project.
What was the December request?